For centuries, the kingdom of Sayen flourished under the rays of the benevolent sun. Young Princess Sophia was the soul and hope of her people. But a dark magician appeared at the celebration, whose shadow overshadowed all the fun. Driven by envy of the girl's strength, he placed a terrible curse on her. The kingdom fell, engulfed by thorns, and the inhabitants fled their homelands in fear. The heroine was left alone, forever imprisoned within the walls of the cursed castle. But the princess's story did not end there, taking an unexpected turn. The girl spent countless years in melancholy, seeing no end to her suffering. A sudden crack in the sky gave her the first hope in a long time. When the invisible barrier collapsed, the heroine rushed towards her new destiny. The girl believed that her savior had finally appeared. After 147 years of imprisonment, the heroine was ready to lift the curse. However, the arriving hero was astonished to find only a chicken on the pillow. An ordinary-looking bird looked suspiciously at the immaculately dressed young man. The young man couldn't believe that he had been so foolishly taken in. In despair, the boy lamented the futile sacrifice of his knights. But the chicken turned out to be not so simple, and was getting ready to show its character. A knight suddenly ran in and revealed that this bird was His Majesty. Sir Paul was in complete shock when the damned chicken attacked him with flames. The bird, in a rage, pounced on the hero for disrespecting the heiress of Sayen. The young man could not contain his indignation at such an impudent prank. Having transformed into a human, Sophia proudly declared her origins. Orwell was confused, because they were looking for a sleeping princess, not a talking bird. The hero got a headache from the absurdity of what was happening. The princess demanded that Emperor Crotia respect her kingdom. The boy flared up and declared that her thorn-covered lands were not worthy of being called a kingdom. Orwell tried to reason with his master, whose jokes had gone too far. The assistant reminded the emperor that the entire order was watching his strange conversation with the chicken. The young man realized with horror that he was the only one who could hear the princess's voice. The knights were perplexed and decided that their leader had gone mad. The knights attributed their commander's strange behavior to the long and tiring journey. The young man was pierced by a terrible suspicion. Could he really be the only one who could hear the princess? To test his theory, the young man decisively touched the beak of the agitated bird. A sudden flash of light blinded the hero, confirming his wildest assumptions. Orwell immediately cast a protective spell, chiding himself for doubting his master. In a panic, he ordered the knights to prepare for battle, recognizing the glow as attack magic. Finally realizing that the chicken was Princess Sophia, everyone rushed to catch her. The girl realized that these rude men were not heroes capable of lifting her curse. The disappointed princess flew away, cursing the stupid magician she had trusted. Having come to his senses, the angry hero demanded that his people find the escaped chicken. Orwell still could not believe what had happened, and asked the gentleman how he had figured it all out. The thought that this impudent chicken was Princess Sophia was beyond my comprehension. Irritated by his assistant's distrust, the hero brushed off the pointless questions. Orwell was at a loss to comprehend the absurdity of the situation. The emperor decided to act alone and ordered his knights not to follow him. There was no time left for empty talk. It was necessary to urgently catch up with the fugitive. The young man was determined to personally settle the matter with the stubborn princess. Looking at the portrait of the beautiful maiden, the guy assumed that she was hiding in the palace garden. No one could believe that the gentle beauty in the painting and the mad chicken were one and the same person. The feathers scattered around the garden seemed like a mocking invitation to chase. The guy is serious about talking and is not going to back down. Having found the princess in the garden, he tried to reason with her, as running away would not solve the problem. The young man suggested that she forget their awkward meeting, which greatly surprised the girl. Sophia couldn't believe he had taken her outburst so lightly. Was his magic so pathetic that her antics seemed harmless to him? The heroine thought bitterly that in human form she would have deserved more respect. Embarrassed by her situation, the girl demanded to be left alone. In desperation, she pointed to a tiny hole in which she definitely couldn't hide. Realizing that she was stuck alone with him, the princess furiously attacked the slow-witted guy. The young man apologized sheepishly, trying to establish contact with her. The girl complained in despair that even in the body of a chicken she could not die, and continued to gain weight on grass alone. The guy awkwardly sympathized with her plight, which only angered the princess even more. To understand the situation, he asked if any strange magician had confessed his love to her. The heroine realized with horror that her tragic story had turned into a humiliating legend about selling her soul. The princess offered Emperor Crotia a deal, promising to dispel the rumors in exchange for getting rid of the thorn bush. Burning with shame for her situation, the girl tried to fly away from her intrusive savior. She swore that she would rather die than allow this man to control her destiny. However, all her efforts were in vain when a strong hand easily caught her in the air. The young man mockingly reminded her that she was a chicken, not a hawk, and would not be able to fly far. Having put her in a cage, the hero tried to calm the princess, but only fueled her rage even more. Sophia was skeptical of his promises, fearing an invasion after the curse was lifted. Sighing wearily, the boy assured her that he had no plans for her empty lands. Time is inexorable, and one day the fallen kingdom of Sayen will itself become part of his great empire. The hero questioned her ability to protect the kingdom, as she was left all alone. Despite his doubts, the girl was confident that the descendants of her people would one day return. She believed that the legends of Sayen, passed down through generations, would call her people home. The young man was skeptical of her prophecy, but agreed that the main goal was to lift the curse. The princess asked about his plan to destroy the bushes, since she herself was powerless. She bitterly admitted that the curse had weakened her, and now she had little control over her magic. Suddenly, the young man understood everything. In order to get rid of the thorn bush, she first had to remove her own curse. According to ancient legend, only a true hero, warrior, or knight could lift the curse. The emperor believed that typical heroes were no longer to be found in their times, but a knight was a perfectly plausible option. Orwell, buried under books, nervously hurried his master, sensing something was wrong. Suddenly, the guy remembered that his assistant had once been involved in fencing. By his strange logic, this automatically made Orwell technically a knight. Without thinking twice, the young man offered to officially knight his mage right then and there. He smiled and bestowed upon Orwell the honor of becoming the first great magician of the empire to be knighted. When the embarrassed assistant agreed, the emperor realized that he had found the very hero. It was Orwell to whom he decided to entrust the great mission, to become the hero who would lift the curse. Having solemnly handed him the cage, the boy gave him the opportunity to save the princess. Having been knighted, Orwell dropped his books in horror at the order to kiss the princess. Even after initiation, the magician doubted the adequacy of his master. As proof, the guy gave a compelling argument. The chicken itself told him everything. To make sure his words were true, Orwell decided to give the heroine a little test. The princess's answer about the love potion took the magician by surprise with its unexpected accuracy. The girl felt confusion in the young man's voice, because he himself did not believe in the existence of such a potion. Orwell became finally convinced of the unique connection between the emperor and the princess, which he himself could not understand. It seems that fate itself destined His Majesty to become the savior of this girl. At the mere thought of kissing a chicken, the guy became furious, flatly refusing such a fate. Orwell decided he had had enough of this bullying and was already mentally writing his resignation letter. Exhausted by the emotional swings, the young man suggested postponing the kiss until another day. Orwell reminded them that it was time for them to leave, but the emperor had a new problem: how to transport the princess. The heroine was furious at how unceremoniously the guy held her under his arm, as if she were an ordinary bird. To appease her pride, the young man put the princess on his horse, since a royal person cannot be transported in a cage. However, the hero's clumsy attempts to calm the girl down with caresses only made her more angry. The princess demanded that this humiliating treatment be stopped and that the horse be led normally, which greatly embarrassed the emperor. Her patience was running out, and only the thought of lifting the curse made her tolerate this insolent man. The emperor coldly reminded her of the consequences of disobedience, but the impudent heroine only defiantly suggested punishing her. She sarcastically imagined how his name would go down in history as the ruler who executed a chicken for treason. Their squabble was interrupted by an unexpected sight ahead, which made both of them fall silent in bewilderment. The heroes, striving for their goal, sacrificed everything unnecessary for the sake of speed. The boy's anxious words hinted at the seriousness of the situation, causing the princess to tense up. The young man reassured the princess, pointing out Orwell's extraordinary magical abilities. The glitter of the imperial jewels on Orwell underscored his important role in this mission. The princess was shocked by the cost of the mana stones, doubting their necessity. The approach to the thorn bush meant the beginning of the decisive battle, and Orwell was ready for the order. Orwell's powerful magic was their last hope in this desperate situation. A burst of magic summoned an army of blades, raising the knight's morale. The heroine, looking at the scorched earth, asked in bewilderment where the thorns had gone. The guy was stunned, and in despair swore that he had not lied about the ubiquitous thorns. The boy, in despair, described the terrible thorns that mercilessly dealt with his knights. Suddenly, the girl noticed the familiar imperial castle of Croatia on the horizon. Her indignation knew no bounds, because all this time they were just 2 steps away from his house. The young man tried to justify himself by pointing out on the map the long journey they had made to her kingdom. The princess immediately accused him of invading, calling him the real villain in this story. Ironically, the cursed thorn bush that destroyed the kingdom has now become its only protector. The young man slyly changed the subject, bringing up the river that divided their lands. He explained that they had no choice but to cross the border into her country. Seeing his gloomy face, Sophia silently sympathized, realizing that he had his own unspoken concerns. However, as soon as they arrived at the castle, the girl immediately ran away, leaving her problems behind. The emperor's mind was in chaos. He could not believe that he had made such a mistake. In despair, the young man lamented his ignorance of the chicken's flying abilities. Orwell confidently assured his master that the search was already underway and that the fugitive would soon be with them. The young man sarcastically doubted his success, since there were countless chickens in the world. The wise assistant suggested that harsh reality itself would force the pampered princess to return. Taking advantage of the moment, Orwell decided to ask a question that had been bothering him for a long time. He asked directly if His Majesty was so sure that this chicken was really Princess Sophia. The main proof for the guy was that the thorns retreated in her presence. But Orwell noticed a discrepancy. If the bushes were supposed to imprison her, why did they let her go? A sudden insight struck the young man. What if this chicken is not a princess, but that same evil magician? Orwell made the bold suggestion that if the magician himself pretended to be Princess Sophia, dark magic is insidious, and after a century, the caster could well have become a victim of his own curse. The only proof of her identity was words, and this uncertainty drove the emperor crazy. Casting aside his doubts, the young man decided to focus on the upcoming important meeting. He gave his assistant a strange order to immediately get any white chicken. Orwell suggested postponing the meeting until they found the real princess. But the emperor had other plans. Influential nobles who controlled half the empire's budget were already waiting for an audience, and he could not send them away. Realizing his short-sightedness, the faithful assistant apologized to his master with shame. With a sly smile, the young man urged Orwell on. For now, he understood the full importance of his strange undertaking. The entire palace was already full of high-ranking guests, eagerly awaiting the start of the meeting. Desperate to find a hero, the princess decides to take matters into her own hands and find a suitable knight. The only clue to salvation was a gold medal with an eagle on it. Full of determination, the girl sets off in search of the Imperial Guard, where her knight should be. Her search led her to a majestic building, the headquarters of the Order of the Eagle. 3 days after Sophia's escape, chilling screams began to be heard from the Order of the Eagle at night. Every night, cries of pain broke the silence, giving rise to terrible rumors among the castle's inhabitants. Rumors of a mysterious nocturnal attacker quickly spread throughout the palace, sowing panic among the servants. They talked about a certain pervert who kisses sleeping knights at night, causing general bewilderment. But the emperor had no shadow of doubt as to who was behind these mysterious events. Orwell merely confirmed his master's suspicions, since everything pointed to Princess Sophia's guilt. All the injured knights were members of that very expedition, but the girl's tactic of kissing and running away baffled the emperor. Her naive idea of a kiss, gleaned from fairy tales, was the only way she knew to break the curse. In order to somehow explain his strange behavior to the nobles, the young man presented them with a fake chicken. Realizing that he couldn't catch her using conventional methods, the guy decided to resort to cunning and set a trap for her. Meanwhile, the real Sophia, tired of the endless search, found temporary refuge in an empty storage room. Once again disappointed in her attempts, the girl came to the conclusion that it was all a waste of time. Suddenly, a terrible guess struck her that this very unbearable emperor was her betrothed hero. This thought plunged her into despair, because now she had to somehow get into his bedroom. She immediately discarded the idea, deciding to resort to it only as a last resort. Having gathered her courage, the heroine decided to continue her search among the knights, using her chicken position as cover. Full of determination, Sophia encouraged herself, believing that she would succeed. Sneaking into the next room, she felt something was wrong due to the increased security. Finding Sir Chen sleeping, the girl mentally apologized to her latest victim. Without wasting a second, the heroine quickly rushed at the sleeping knight. But an unpleasant surprise awaited her. Instead of a knight, a treacherous emperor found himself in bed. Outraged by his insolence, the girl demanded that he let her go. But the young man only grinned in response. In the heat of the fight, the princess dug her claws into his arm, which infuriated the guy. In despair, she threatened to burn the bag. But the young man only advised her to think carefully. The heroine realized with horror that she was sitting in the bag that she had just threatened to set on fire. The emperor coldly admitted that her tiny kingdom held no interest for him. Princess Sophia was skeptical of his words, since there was no need to lie to the ruler of a third of the continent. He had no plans for her lands. His true goal was the Seine River that flowed through her kingdom. While tying the bag, the young man emphasized that this river was the key to the heart of her kingdom. The indignant girl broke free from the bag, because the desire to get the river was no different from capturing the entire kingdom. The naive princess was confident in the well-being of her river, unaware of the impending disaster. The guy revealed to her the bitter truth. For more than half a century, the Seine River has not flowed due to a mysterious blockage. This news shocked the girl, because the only reason could be the cursed blackthorn. Although the exact reason was unknown, the young man was confident that this was their best guess. He explained that the problem was not so serious 6 months ago, but the situation has worsened sharply. Pointing to the sky, the young man hinted at the coming rains, which would turn the traffic jam into a real disaster. The only hope for relief from the drought was rain, which had not arrived in the south for 6 months. Finally, Sophia understood that the ruler of the great empire had personally gone to her kingdom to save his people. With a slight mockery, she called him a ruler with a kind heart, which slightly embarrassed the young man. The girl explained that he is actually much nicer than he tries to appear. It was no surprise to her that the ruler cared about his people. Hearing such a compliment for the first time, the embarrassed ruler could not hide his blush. She touched him with sympathy, realizing what a heavy burden he carried on his shoulders. The unexpected tenderness of the chicken caused him to feel strange and disconcerting. Suddenly bursting into the room, the guy grabbed his stunned assistant. In dismay, he admitted that Orwell had been right, and they now had to act. Suddenly, the young man realized that this princess, or rather the chicken, possessed some kind of magical power. Orwell was stunned by these statements, not understanding what was happening to his master. Deciding that compliments were the emperor's weakness, the assistant promised to give them regularly, which gave him a migraine. The boy shouted in anger at him not to twist his words, but Orwell saw this only as confirmation of his theory. The assistant slyly suggested that His Majesty was saying this only because he had been complimented. In a panic, the young man began to doubt himself, thereby finally destroying his authority in Orwell's eyes. In awkward silence, Sophia listened to their absurd conversation, completely bewildered. Looking at the ruler, unable to accept a simple compliment, she thought sadly about the imminent collapse of his empire. Meanwhile, Sir Chen, a proud knight of the Order of the Eagle, was introduced as the emperor's loyal protector. Besides the grueling training and daytime duty, other more bizarre trials awaited him. Exhausted from unpaid night shifts, Sir Chen wandered through the dark corridors of the palace. He felt betrayed that his loyalty to the emperor had been so unceremoniously exploited. Having lost even his own room, the knight was on the verge of despair when there was a knock at the door. Sir Chen, having gathered his last strength, appeared at the summons of his master. The summons to the emperor's private office at such a late hour made his heart beat anxiously. Upon entering, the knight was stunned to see in the middle of the office only a shining chicken on a velvet pillow. The emperor offered him a chance to make history, but Sir Chen didn't understand what it had to do with the bird princess. Noticing his confusion, the young man hinted that the knight should have already guessed everything. The young man announced a top-secret mission on which the fate of the entire empire now depended. Inspired by the trust placed in him, Sir Chen swore to secrecy, ready for any challenge. The emperor revealed a terrible secret to the knight. Perhaps this chicken is not a princess, but an evil magician. Despite the princess's fierce denial, doubts had already been sown in the emperor's soul. Grabbing the knight by the shoulders, the young man solemnly handed over the fate of the entire empire into his hands. In the glare of the spotlight, he invited Sir Chen to become a hero and kiss the beautiful princess. The stunned knight stuttered as he tried to clarify what exactly His Majesty meant. His question about kissing the tip of the beak shocked everyone, because no one had thought about it before. Even the princess herself was confused, trying to figure out the anatomy of a chicken kiss. Tired of this comedy, Orwell hurried them, because it was already late and it didn't matter where to kiss. An embarrassed Sir Chen, having apologized to Her Highness, prepared himself for the fateful kiss. In trepidation, he touched her beak, believing that this kiss would finally lift the curse. Unfortunately, the kiss didn't work, and the disappointed princess realized that Sir Chen was not her hero. The emperor was tired of this endless comedy, and the heroine herself was at her limit. The exhausted girl collapsed on the floor, begging to be left alone. The young man declared with pathos that he had remained faithful to his future empress all his life and had no intention of kissing anyone. The princess was surprised by the high moral principles of the royal person of Croatia. With a slight grin, she suggested that he had never been in a relationship, which struck a nerve. Suddenly, the boy made a fateful decision to break his oath for the sake of a higher purpose. Grabbing a chicken, he declared that if he was destined to be a hero, he would sacrifice himself for the empire. Confused, Orwell turned away, unable to watch this absurd scene as the girl screamed desperately. Despite her panic, the emperor decided to start all over again, and this time see it through to the end. The girl was surprised to find that his grip was surprisingly comfortable and secure. Gently touching her beak, the young man finally performed his heroic deed. Burning with shame, the princess decided that this kiss was her punishment for all the secret kisses with the knights. Suddenly turning pale, the emperor collapsed into a chair, which greatly frightened Orwell. With irony in his voice, the assistant congratulated his master, because now he was the very hero who had lifted the centuries-old curse. The princess looked at her paws in confusion, trying to figure out if the curse had really been lifted. She realized with horror that she was still a chicken and nothing had changed. The emperor clutched his head in despair, not understanding why his heroic act had not worked. Suddenly, Orwell, too, began to understand her cackle, realizing that the curse had not been completely lifted. Now that they could both understand her, he hopefully assumed they had made some progress. The first sign of change was the change in color of her tail, which shocked the girl. This was encouraging, because if part of the curse was lifted, then the rest would soon fall away. But the thought that this unbearable guy was her hero just didn't fit into her head. He frankly admitted that he did not possess outstanding swordsmanship. Even at the age of 5, it became clear that he would not become a warrior, much to the disappointment of his mentor. In despair, the princess could not understand why he was the one who could save her. With pathos, the young man explained that, as an emperor, he stood above all heroes, warriors, and knights. Sophia shook her head doubtfully, not believing that Sir Chen's kiss could have worked too late. Orwell, hearing her female voice, was finally convinced that it was the real Princess Sophia in front of him. However, the sudden suggestion that the evil magician could be a woman plunged the heroine into real horror. The emperor did not rule out that the magician could also be the man with the high voice, which caused confusion. He advised his assistant to be more open-minded. But Orwell had a bad feeling. The young man assumed that this was a cunning plan of the magician, calculated on their stereotypes, which completely infuriated the princess. Tired of this nonsense, Orwell once again considered quitting while the two were sorting things out. The Seine River had always been a gift of nature, which her kingdom only temporarily enjoyed. The girl felt guilty, because as a princess, she should have taken better care of the river. She offered her help in the fight against drought, but the young man assured her that everything was under control. They still had time until the aqueducts dried up, but returning the river to its bed would be a real salvation. Tired from a hard day, the guy decided to put off all discussions until tomorrow and go to bed. At the Council of Nobles, terrible news was heard. The curse of Sayen had crossed the river and was bringing with it infection. In desperation, one of the nobles demanded that the cursed chicken be sacrificed to appease the wrath of the gods and end the drought. The emperor considered such rituals nonsense, realizing that there was no place for incompetent officials at his court. With an imperturbable expression, the maid introduced Her Highness Princess Sophia to Orwell, demanding that he show her respect. The assistant could barely contain his laughter, trembling with tension under the condemning gaze of the angry princess. Burning with shame and humiliation, the girl burst into furious cackle, lamenting her disgrace. In the heat of the moment, the crown fell from her head, but the princess saw this as an opportune moment for decisive action. Left alone with Orwell in the library, she firmly stated that they needed to discuss something. After much reflection, the heroine came to the conclusion that there was another way to cope with the drought. She suggested that the solution lay in his spellbooks, and Orwell immediately set out to find them. Easily lifting a stack of books into the air, the princess left the stunned magician to beg her for an explanation. The girl read ancient texts with ease, because any magician would take security measures for their spellbooks. Opening one of the books, the princess released a blinding light that had been hidden within its pages for centuries. Orwell watched in amazement as it happened, for this was precisely the magic he had been trying to warn everyone about. The light dissipated, and before him stood a beautiful girl, frightened by her sudden transformation. Meanwhile, the emperor was being forcibly taken out of the office, but he asked the guards for 5 more minutes. Looking at the old portrait, the young man finally realized that the beautiful princess in the painting was real. When asked about her beauty, the guy only laughed nervously, trying to hide his embarrassment. He could not understand why his kiss only partially lifted the curse and demanded an explanation from Orwell. The answer was simple and cruel. True love's kiss was needed for complete healing. Orwell's mocking account of his happy family life only further angered the already annoyed emperor. This was a unique chance for Crotia to finally find her empress. By lifting the curse, he could make the last queen of Sayen his wife. Their love story would be passed down from generation to generation, celebrated in songs and ballads. History books would call it a unique story of true love. Orwell, with a sly grin, denied his secret pleasure in this situation. He just wanted to remind his master of the help and care he had given him. With a beaming smile, he recalled how the emperor had helped him win the heart of his future wife. The angry young man declared that Orwell was now definitely in his debt for all his advice. It all started 5 years ago when a confused mage fell into a lake while trying to impress his lover. Orwell calmly admitted that he remembered everything, but was not going to give in. True to his word, Orwell promised to repay the favor, which only added to his master's headache. He noted with irony what a hassle it was to choose an empress from hundreds of noble ladies. Tired of his teasing, the young man asked what Princess Sophia was doing now. It turned out that after a fleeting transformation, the girl locked herself in her room and refused to come out. Orwell suggested that His Majesty visit her himself, and this thought made the young man think. Suddenly, the emperor asked what had made his assistant change his mind so abruptly about their marriage. It turned out that Princess Sophia proposed her own solution to the drought problem in the south. Orwell strongly advised her to seriously consider her proposal, because she was a great magician. Being the last of her kind, she was the key to solving their problems, and the young man understood this. Instead of marriage, he proposed a simpler solution, to make Sayen part of Crocia's empire. The emperor was confident in his plan, but Orwell pointed out one thing he had not taken into account. In a rage, the young man realized that his assistant was hinting at himself, since there was no room for marriage in his plans. Orwell wondered bitterly if the empire was in such despair that he would have to marry a princess. He reminded that since the conversation was about his marriage, he should also have a say. But the young man merely patted him on the shoulder patronizingly, reminding him that not everything in the world goes according to plan, especially when it comes to such important issues as the fate of an entire empire. Entering the princess's room, he coughed awkwardly, trying to get her attention. Seeing her golden feathers, he realized that she had already told Orwell everything, and he was immensely grateful. However, the girl was so depressed that his words did not bother her at all. In despair, the guy sat down on the bed, not knowing what to do in this difficult situation. He took a brooch out of his pocket, although he doubted whether it could be called gratitude. But then he showed her a treaty that recognized Sayen as an independent country. However, the agreement will only come into force after the curse is completely lifted and the river returns to its course. Suddenly, the girl asked him if he had ever fallen in love in his life. Her question caught him off guard, because she was wondering if he knew what true love was. What is true love anyway? And how can one measure this abstract feeling? Is it really necessary to reach a certain point for love to be considered true? In a rage, the princess cursed the magician, because if he were alive, she would have broken his neck. It was this abstract nature of true love that was the cause of her current suffering. He bitterly admitted that in reality, there was not a single person who cared about his feelings. He apologized for upsetting her, but finding true love seemed like a hopeless endeavor to him. But who was she supposed to look for, since she could only communicate with certain people, and mostly with magicians? Magic is a dying art these days, and finding a suitable candidate was nearly impossible. He thought with annoyance that if only Orwell had not been married, everything would have been much simpler. Having collected his thoughts, the young man decided to ask the princess one very important question. He asked if she was willing to accept any challenge if it would help break the curse. Looking at him, she agreed without hesitation, because she simply had no other choice. Suddenly, his heart was filled with love, and he realized that he was ready to do anything for her. If after each kiss she can return to her appearance for 5 minutes, then about 100 kisses should completely remove the curse. With a gleam in his eyes, he offered to test his theory and give her 100 kisses. The emperor's grand plan to kiss the princess turned into complete chaos and desperate screams. Suddenly, Lady Maybelline, Orwell's wife, and an influential aristocrat appeared on the scene. Irritated by the rumors, the young man tried to find out from Lady Maybelline how she knew everything. Even the mighty emperor could not resist his advisor, whom everyone feared. Lady Maybelline smiled and said that dozens of people had seen him enter the princess's room, and how he was thrown out of there in disgrace to the sounds of enraged clucking. However, according to her, all these humiliating details no longer had any significance. The ladies of the court were already discussing with great enthusiasm that Princess Sophia would become the ideal empress. The cunning Lady Maybelline reminded him of the careless words he had spoken to Lady Cherian. In a panic, the young man pretended not to remember any Cherian, but it was too late. The emperor choked on his tea after hearing this, as most people would have been offended by such questions. He tried to justify himself by explaining that he only wanted to test Lady Cherian's resolve. But rumors usually don't care about context, and they live their own lives, acquiring new details. The very fact that he was able to treat this conversation with humor already spoke of him as a good ruler. The previous emperor used a cunning educational strategy, forcing young Pinnock to befriend the ducal sons. Upon reaching adulthood, he was sent to war, where he had to face harsh reality. The main reason he survived on the battlefield was the support of his loyal friends. His successful reign is the result of careful planning, which is why everyone takes the choice of the empress so seriously. Lady Maybelline was not sure that all the noble ladies really supported Princess Sophia, but the drought in the south was troubling everyone, and lifting the curse of Sayen became a top priority for the entire empire. The emperor was offended that the ladies of the court thought so little of him, but in reality, all the inhabitants of the empire wanted their cold emperor to finally find his love. Now everyone was eagerly awaiting the end of the drought in the south, because it was connected with the fate of their ruler. Enraged by what she heard, Princess Sophia vented her anger on the innocent pillow. She was furious, hating this shameless pervert and the whole world. In a fit of anger, the girl threw a pillow at the door, cursing him and wishing he would become impotent. Having calmed down, she decided that it was worth apologizing to the knights for her night terror. Realizing how much she had frightened them, Sophia slapped herself across the cheeks in remorse. The maids suddenly appeared and caught her in an awkward position, which only added to her humiliation. But first, she needed to find a new man who would help her break the curse. His shamelessness could still be tolerated, but his perversions, never. She wept over her fate, unable to accept such a hero. In despair, the princess threw the pillow off the bed, screaming that her fate could not be so cruel. So what if he's handsome? Too much beauty is also a problem. She needed a kind and gentle man, not this hot and arrogant guy. Inspired by dreams of carrot-shaped love, she shared her plans with the enthusiastic maid. In a fit of joy, The girl completely forgot that she was no longer alone. With shining eyes, she demanded that the door be opened for her so that she could go in search of the real prince. She ran down the corridor, skipping and skipping, and her faithful maid could barely keep up with her. But how could she fall in love if no one understood her language, and her pillow supply was running low? In despair, the princess dipped her head in tea, begging to simply be killed. The servant's new intrusive hospitality only increased her bewilderment. She was sure that it was all connected with the letter from Orwell, because her idea for combating the drought apparently worked. But such excessive attention only embarrassed her, and she did not need such hospitality. The next day, the emperor spoke with a sly smile about the similarity between mana and aura. He explained that all the imperial mages had been sent south, and he had no one to consult with. This news shocked the girl, because it meant that there was not a single magician left in the palace. The young man confirmed her fears, adding that the magician could not be found even in the capital. In a rage, she attacked him for not telling her about it earlier, to which he only calmly replied that she hadn't asked. Having calmed down, the guy explained that he had not come to quarrel, but to give her a gift. Suddenly, Madame Megan appeared in the room, and the emperor asked if she could hear the princess's voice. An embarrassed Megan confirmed that she heard, and the young man declared her the princess's new personal knight. Sophia was shocked that her personal guard would be a knight who used aura. The emperor presented this with a smile as a reward for her contribution to the development of the empire. The princess could not believe that a man with such talent would be entrusted with the job of an ordinary security guard. She turned sympathetically to Ms. Megan, but she only assured her that she was happy to serve His Majesty. The young man watched this scene with a grin, enjoying his small victory. Trying to enlighten her, he explained that she was a magician and needed appropriate protection. The indignant girl declared that this was a waste of talent and demanded that the knight be given to her. But the young man was adamant, because Mrs. Megan had sworn allegiance to the empire and could not change her citizenship. Mrs. Megan proudly stated that Croatia is not only the richest country, but also has the best living conditions. But the princess objected, because her little kingdom always valued its people above all else. This thought made her think that if these two fell in love with each other, then their kingdoms could be united. Outraged that she, a powerful princess, was being assigned a guard, she stamped her paw in protest. She is a chicken that can take care of herself and doesn't need any nanny. Horrified by her thoughts, she slapped her cheeks, reminding herself that she was a human being, not a bird. Waking up in an unfamiliar corridor, she realized that she was lost in this huge palace. A sudden crash and swearing from the kitchen caught her attention, and she hurried toward the noise. The chicken has escaped, and now the chefs will have to scramble to prepare dinner without the main ingredient. But fate decreed otherwise, and instead of soup, the princess almost became the main dish of the evening. In a panic, the princess barely dodged the enraged cook's cleaver, desperately trying to save her life. The derogatory nickname, "Stupid Chicken," echoed in her head, causing a wave of indignation. In her rage, she forgot about her position, ready to incinerate the impudent man with just one glance. But her angry cries were drowned out by a strong hand that grabbed her at the most inopportune moment. Before she could come to her senses, the girl found herself in the tenacious hands of the cook, who had no intention of letting her go. The sudden appearance of the emperor interrupted this unequal battle, causing the cook to freeze in horror. Clinging to her savior, the princess breathed a sigh of relief, glad that her wing was intact. The young man's cold tone did not bode well, and the cook fell on his face, awaiting his fate. In tears, he begged for forgiveness, justifying himself by saying that he was only trying to catch an escaped chicken. The young man looked with irony at the chicken, which had escaped only because it was mistaken for a real chicken. Amid the prying eyes of his courtiers, the emperor tried to remain calm. He had not yet secured the full support of the people, and any mistake could cost him the throne. But the cook, not knowing the whole story, begged them not to take the chicken away from him, because it would only make things worse for the people. With a sly smile, the young man hinted that even the chef did not know the whole truth about this bird. He explained that there are things in the world that you can eat and things that you shouldn't, and this chicken is one of the latter. Suddenly, the girl broke free from his arms and, soaring into the air, challenged him. Standing in front of the order building, he asked if she was ready for what awaited them. He looked ridiculous with a chicken on a leash, but the princess reminded him that they were already expected. The guy looked at her doubtfully, still not believing that she hoped to find her hero among the knights. But the girl was determined and declared that she would never give up this hope. She knew she had gotten involved with the wrong person, but the world was a big place, and her hero had to be somewhere. His tenderness and caresses only irritated her, because she was looking for salvation, not consolation. He grabbed her in his arms and carried her inside, ignoring her indignant squeals. Having gathered all the knights, the princess prepared to deliver her apology speech. But her fiery cackle only caused bewilderment among the warriors, who did not understand anything. Sighing, the emperor realized that she had forgotten about her curse, and that was why she needed Megan. The girl tried to explain that although she was ashamed, she had caused them irreparable harm. She told about a scoundrel who would sneak into their bedrooms at night and steal kisses. The knights looked at each other in bewilderment, not understanding what their highness was trying to convey to them. The emperor watched this scene with a serious expression, realizing that things were taking a serious turn. With a desperate cry, she admitted her guilt, wanting to offer the most sincere apologies. To her surprise, the knights greeted her confession with enthusiastic cries. Deeply touched, she did not expect to be received so well. The emperor could hardly contain his laughter as he watched this truly magnificent moment. Despite their success, they needed to get rid of the curse as soon as possible. The last heir to the kingdom of Sayen slept peacefully, unaware of her important mission. Looking at the portrait, the young man could not imagine this refined lady in the form of a chicken. Suddenly, he remembered Lady Maybelline, known in high society as the Duchess Georgina. This news stunned the princess. With slight sadness, the guy said that they got married 3 years ago and already had 2 children. Duchess Georgina is now the most powerful figure in high society, and her diary could be the key to the mystery. He had heard that noble ladies were quite knowledgeable in matters of love, and decided that the Duchess's advice would be most welcome. Pointing to the first page, he drew her attention to an important detail that she might have missed. Usually, lovers call each other not by their names, but by affectionate nicknames. The thought of nicknames brought a storm of emotions to her, because in Sayen, it was something special. With a sly smile, he suggested starting with the most reasonable option. The embarrassed girl tried to avoid any misunderstandings, since their relationship was purely business. She reminded him that since he had never kissed anyone, he had never had a relationship. Trying to find a compromise, she had a hard time choosing her words so as not to offend him, but also not to give him false hope. Her innocent question about whether he had ever truly fallen in love infuriated him. He indignantly stated that he had experienced his first love before puberty. The girl couldn't believe that this man actually considered nicknames to be the basis of a love relationship. Now, a new rumor was circulating throughout the palace. The emperor's heart had never fluttered from first love. Lady Maybelline knew that there was unrest in the palace and decided to find out all the details from her husband. She insisted that he must hear everything directly from the emperor, as this was not something to be spoken about lightly. Having calmed her husband, she promised that she would take care of this delicate situation herself. 2 days later, Princess Sophia was still unsure whether she should call him dear. Her complicated relationship with the emperor was getting worse, and a simple nickname might have smoothed things over a bit. Being the eldest, she felt responsible, but she could not decide to take this step. In desperation, she decided that she would rather work herself to death in the gym than endure this humiliation. She knew that if he was the one, she would just have to fall in love with him. But it was wrong of her to ask such a personal question about her first love. Mrs. Megan could not understand how a grown man and emperor had never been in love. Before ascending the throne, he was constantly at war and simply had no time for love. The previous emperor was too protective of his only heir, not letting him out of the palace. Bearing such a burden of responsibility, he could hardly trust his heart to anyone. This state of affairs was very different from her country, where the rulers were closer to the people. Her kingdom of Sayen could now only be found in the pages of history books. She was just a ghost of the past, a character from books, lost in time. Ms. Megan was confident that the princess was probably already in love and would be better off taking the initiative. Of course she had a first love, because she was always surrounded by attention. But it all ended before she could confess her feelings. Megan was right, who said that only men should take the initiative. Despite all his faults, she saw nothing in the emperor that could interest her. Mrs. Megan called the emperor an amazing ruler, but the princess was sure he was a tyrant. She didn't argue with his leadership qualities, but she was interested in his attractiveness as a man. In the heat of the argument, Mrs. Megan declared that he was the most handsome man in the entire empire. Clutching her head, she could not dispute this fact, because his beauty was undeniable. Armed with a bottle of wine, Princess Sophia, accompanied by servants, set out to take the decisive step. Gathering all her will into a fist, she told the guard that she wanted to speak with His Majesty. The guard was confused and did not understand what this chicken was doing and why it was behaving so strangely. It seems that rumors about her have already reached everyone, even low-ranking officials. The maid proudly introduced her as Princess Sophia Brianna Fifth Sayen of the Kingdom of Sayen. She explained that the princess had come to meet His Majesty and asked to be informed of her visit. But the guard saw only a chicken in front of him, and the whole situation seemed completely absurd to him. Having asked to wait a minute, he hastened to report the strange visitor. Stumbling with excitement, he tried to explain that either a man or an animal had come to the emperor. An angry Orwell demanded that he speak clearly and distinctly in the presence of His Majesty. In a panic, the guard blurted out "chicken," which made the emperor wonder about the reason for such a sudden visit. He had a bad feeling about this and prepared himself for the worst. He was sure that only she could make him worry about his rule, and he ordered her to be brought inside. The guard carried out the order in bewilderment, because it was just a chicken. Having thanked the guard, Princess Sophia proudly entered the emperor's office. In a rage, she asked if he had drunk all the wine she had brought as an offering, but the young man only grinned, pointing to the huge stack of papers on his desk. He is not one to stay late at work, and he set out on his own to solve the drought problem. Looking at the mountain of papers, the girl realized that Crotia's empire was much larger than she thought. But it didn't end there, because he wasn't even shy about kissing her, offering to test the theory of 100 kisses. He always acted decisively, and as soon as he was offered a solution to the problem, he sent all the magicians to the south. Looking at him, the princess thought that Crotia was very lucky to have such a ruler. He asked with a grin if she didn't know how big his empire was. Outraged by his tone, she replied that no one had told her about it, and how could she know? The continent consisted of 3 empires, 3 major kingdoms, and 6 smaller ones, with Croatia occupying the largest area. The largest river was the Seine, but due to the blocked flow, it almost dried up. Looking at the map, the princess sadly realized how much had changed during her imprisonment. Only traces remain of the small kingdoms that existed 147 years ago. She looked at him with sympathy, realizing how much worry lay on his shoulders. Now it became clear to her why the empress also had so much power, because the empire was huge. Suddenly, the girl announced with delight that she had just found something very important. In the rays of the setting sun, she admitted that what attracts her to people is hard work. It was all cool and positive, but he didn't understand a thing from her confession. She suggested a drink, hoping that a little wine would help them find common ground. Horrified, he asked if she had brought this bottle from his wine cellar. With an unperturbed expression, she confirmed that Dame Megan had given her everything she needed. It turned out that this was such a valuable wine that he himself did not dare to open it. Realizing her mistake, the princess suggested drinking something else, but it was too late. He decided that since the bottle was already open, sooner or later he would have to drink it anyway. This wine should be saved for a special occasion, and that occasion has arrived. With a slight resentment, he said that since he was not destined to know love, at least this kind of pleasure was available to him. Stroking his hand, she said sadly that the people of Croatia were very lucky to have such a devoted ruler. It seems he was destined to work all his life. After all, he is an emperor. But he dreamed of marrying a woman who would take on a third of his responsibilities and bear him a son. His delusional ideas shocked the princess because she did not expect this from the ruler. From an early age, his father forced him to work a lot, not even allowing him to go outside. He thought being an only child meant getting all the love and not having to do tax returns. When he grew up, he was sent to war, because the future emperor must be able to wield a sword. Returning alive, he immediately received the throne, and his father went to enjoy his retirement. She understood him, because she also had a hard time when the last king of Sienne gave her all the magic circles. People say experience is key, but they have no idea how hard it is to do things right. He made her do all the work for the magicians, and then even called her a genius to make her work even more. He was sure there was no reason why he couldn't do it. Blushing embarrassedly, she suggested that they try calling each other nicknames. The word dear made her heart flutter, and she blushed. It seemed like just a name wasn't enough to make someone fall in love, and he knew it. In a panic, he tried to calm down, but his heart was pounding wildly. The wine she drank made her head spin, and she could hardly stand on her feet. She felt hot and couldn't hear a word he said. In his anxiety, he urged her to pull herself together, but the princess was not herself. In a drunken stupor, she accused him of insolence and tried to cuddle up to him, but a sudden surge of magic threw him back, cutting off her clumsy attempts at getting closer. In a rage, he threatened to lock her in the dungeon if she did not stop immediately. But the princess did not tolerate threats from some tomato eye and proudly flew away. Suddenly, she turned into a human, confused and bewildered by her new appearance. Despite her intoxication, she cleverly tried to open the window to escape. Without thinking twice, the girl jumped from the third floor, leaving the emperor in a panic. In drunken joy, she ran around the garden, not paying attention to the pleading cries of the servants. She flapped her wings and flew into the air, bursting into cheerful laughter while everyone looked at her in horror. When she woke up the next morning, she realized with horror that she remembered everything that had happened the previous night. Burning with shame, she cursed her body, which reacted so strangely to alcohol. But her suffering was interrupted by the appearance of the emperor, who sarcastically asked if she was delighted with her glory. Pretending not to remember anything, she tried to hide her shame, but the emperor only laughed at her. He stated that although he shouldn't be able to read a chicken's facial expressions, everything is written on its face. With a gentle smile, he said that he saw right through her, and she didn't even have to pretend. Anyway, Lady Maybelline, the woman who gave her that ridiculous book, is coming this afternoon. He spoke of Orwell's wife, and this news made the princess tense. In a panic, she asked why, fearing that her drunken antics had become public knowledge. He saw many princesses, from those who dreamed of becoming his empress to those who openly despised him. He was convinced that no princess could surprise him again, but she exceeded all his expectations. Remembering her words about Lady Maybelline being the most influential person in high society, he couldn't help but laugh. He thought she would come to scold him, but she only made him laugh to tears with her spontaneity. The emperor's loud laughter echoed through the corridors, causing confusion among the servants. Embarrassed, the princess tried to justify herself, because everyone sometimes does stupid things when they're drunk. Suddenly, Lady Maybelline appeared before her, introducing herself as Maybelline Leon Mons. Captivated by her magnificence, Sophia was delighted to finally meet Orwell's wife. Hearing her polite response, Mrs. Megan was pleasantly surprised and praised her manners. Having thanked him for the warm welcome, she asked the main question that interested her: what had happened last night? The princess promised to answer as best she could, and Mrs. Megan nodded in agreement. Lady Maybelline asked bluntly how she felt about Emperor Lennox. Her ambiguous answer made Lady Maybelline think about the long journey ahead. She reminded him that, as Emperor of Croatia, he was the most powerful man in the entire world. She was confident that an alliance with Croatia would contribute to the prosperity of her kingdom. The emperor will provide her with many talents and resources to help her regain all the lost years. On hearing her answer, Lady Maybelline was glad that the princess recognized the good qualities of the emperor. Judging by the way the conversation was going, Ms. Megan was pleased with how it was going. She was sure that the two would never meet, and with a smile, she gave up the profession of translator. Lately, the emperor had been increasingly visited by the same thought. For some reason, their relationship with the princess became increasingly hostile. Orwell couldn't understand why they couldn't just fall in love with each other. The girl explained that she was simply invited to a small party with close friends. But the emperor knew that wherever Lady Maybelline was, she automatically became the center of social life. In a panic, she tried to justify herself, assuring him that she was not going to run away. She firmly stated that she had no intention of leaving until the curse was lifted. But the emperor was adamant. She could not go to the tea party as a chicken. Is it really possible to eavesdrop on the hostess's husband, especially when it comes to such delicate matters? Overwhelmed with paperwork, he decided to first sort out his work and then think about having tea. With a proud look, the princess announced that the tea party would take place today. She felt awkward in the luxurious carriage, not understanding the purpose of such splendor. Mrs. Megan explained that it was all because of His Majesty's concerns. The fact that the emperor was showing such attention to her was a sign of his serious intentions. But what if he just wants to show off his wealth and power? Upon arrival, the princess immediately threw herself into the arms of Lady Maybelline. It seemed that Her Highness had a difficult path ahead of her, and everyone looked at her with sympathy. The two ladies tacitly understood that without outside intervention, everything would be doomed. The lady said that if true love is the only thing that can break the curse, it will not happen anytime soon. She was afraid that the princess's current form lacked feminine charm, and this was a real blow to Sophia. The emperor, furious, could not believe that anyone would seriously discuss the possibility of falling in love with a chicken. In a panic, Ms. Megan tried to defend her master, assuring him that he was not one to fall in love with appearance. She declared passionately that he was a great man who loved all the hens of the empire. But it was not romantic love. For the miracle of love to happen, she needed to become human, and Lady Maybelline was ready to help her with this. She introduced her to her good friends, who would do everything in their power to help her. Lady Dahlia Tio and Lady Jenny Hesia, having learned of the situation from Maybelline, immediately came to the rescue. They confirmed that Emperor Lennox had never been in a relationship, and that gave them a chance. Full of determination, Princess Sophia decided that it was worth trying to make the emperor fall in love with her. With enthusiasm, they set about the task of winning the heart of the cold ruler. After a cheerful tea party, the princess decided to go to the toilet, but got lost in the huge garden. Suddenly, she came across a black cat and had a bad feeling about it. Meanwhile, the emperor was sifting through mountains of papers, lamenting the incompetence of his nobles. Orwell ironically suggested that the problem lay both in the vast estates and in the incompetent gentry. Because of the hereditary system of titles, the heads of families were often idiots. That's why he needed an empress so much. But he couldn't find a suitable woman. He was sure that this was how it should be, because it was about his future empress. But he was troubled by strange conversations about what Lady Maybelline thought about all this. Orwell himself was not sure, because his wife's thoughts always exceeded his expectations. She invited Lady Dahlia and Lady Jenny to tea to discuss how to make him fall in love. But the emperor did not understand why they should interfere in this matter, since he could find more knowledgeable people. An embarrassed Orwell merely shook his head, since in fact it was he who had conquered Lady Maybelline, and not the other way around. On their wedding day, she revealed that their first meeting was not at the ball, but when she dropped her fan. The emperor was shocked. Did Lady Maybelline really force him to marry her? She set fire to the heart of a young man who knew nothing of love, and Orwell sheepishly asked her not to speak like that about his wife. What a couple! One drops a fan, and the other throws herself into the lake. Their story was full of absurd accidents. Since everyone was trying so hard, he couldn't sit still either, so he ordered his horse to be prepared. But Lady Maybelline said with a smile that the princess had gone into the backyard and would soon return. Orwell suddenly appeared and screamed in panic, not understanding what this chicken was doing with the cat. So, a chicken could beat a cat in a fight. And this thought made the emperor think. In her horror, she did not know how much he had seen, and every time she looked like a silly little chicken in front of him. He stroked her with a gentle smile, telling her that it was all over. But she didn't understand what was happening. The friends were delighted and decided that it was love. But the princess was sure that they were wrong. The next day, she was inundated with paperwork, not understanding why the hell she had to do all this. Orwell explained that His Majesty valued her highly, but if she did nothing, she was nothing more than a parasite. But if she can prove that her magic is useful to the empire, it will come in handy in future negotiations between their countries. Then the creation of the Ministry of Magic is just around the corner. But isn't there only 3 magicians in the empire, including Orwell? In a vast empire, there were only 3 mages. This thought haunted her. Magic is dying out, and the creation of the Ministry of Magic will play a key role in the last era of wizarding. Suddenly, she jumped off the table and approached the emperor with a serious question. She asked if it was true that there were people who wanted to sacrifice her blood to the gods. She flapped her wings and stamped her paw, because that is why she wants to create a Ministry of Magic. If she does something outstanding in the era of extinction, she will immediately silence human discontent. But the young man advised her not to read too much, because he did not want her abilities to go to waste. The more people they had working for them, the better. and he stroked her gently, showing his concern. Embarrassed by his touch, she suggested they talk about something else, like a date. His question shocked her, because wasn't he going to remove the spell? He was getting ready, but he didn't understand why they needed a date for this. He sighed and agreed, deciding to start with something simple, like tea. But the princess had her own plans, and she stated that she had already planned everything in advance. The date would happen anyway, and if she ran away, he would drag her back. Orwell suddenly appeared and offered to escort her back to the room. On the way, she asked him if he had made the magic circle he had talked about himself. His answer left her perplexed, because wasn't there an academy here? Thinking about it, she realized that they also had an academy, but everything was a little different. There are simply no classes where they teach magic, because it is a dying art these days. At the Saiyan Kingdom Academy, half of the classes were devoted to magic, and most of the professors were also magicians. He listened to her stories with envy, because everything was different for them. She reassured him by telling him that he had her, the greatest magician of that era. In gratitude, she invited him to ask any questions, and he happily agreed. They found a lot of groundwater in the south, but all the springs were located far from the village. The princess suggested connecting them to the irrigation system using magic. Then their wheat farms will have an irrigation system, and they will be able to use magic by connecting it to the groundwater. The thought gave Orwell goosebumps, as he might have to go back south. The next day, on their first date, he asked her a serious question. Who told her about this place? She didn't understand what he was unhappy about, thinking that he was upset that she had taken him out into the street. He asked her to look around, because everything looked normal, but she pointed to the walls made of glass, through which dozens of eyes were watching them. Everyone around them was staring at them, and it didn't bother her at all, because that's how it was supposed to be. She had done nothing to be ashamed of, and did not understand why she had to hide. But he reminded her of the rumors that might spread if they were seen together. If they do everything so openly, it will cause problems, because she has not forgotten who he is. She listed with a sneer Emperor Crotia, an amateur swordsman and a lover of kisses. He slammed the table in a rage, not believing that she dared to speak like that, drunk to the point of unconsciousness. She simply replied that he had asked himself, and there was no need to remind him of her shameful history. In any case, it was irrelevant, and he tried to change the subject. He wanted to say that he was not only an emperor, but also a bachelor in the prime of life. If they become an official couple, they will face pressure to get married. But they could never be informal, because only true love could break the curse. And once the curse is lifted, the Seine River will flow again, and it will be impossible to keep it a secret. While she was dating him, all eyes were on them, but she was not his empress. Besides, she wasn't his type, and he felt very sorry for that. She replied with a grin that he was not her type either, Your Majesty. She was glad that they had come to a common decision and breathed a sigh of relief. When it comes to something as serious as marriage, it is very important that both parties are on the same page. He offered to make sure no one changed their minds, and she readily agreed. If she follows what Maybelline said, it should be a casual conversation. But for some reason, it was so awkward that she even choked. To break the silence, she asked him if he had a hobby, and he stopped. He replied that his hobby was work, and that was enough for them to eat. Grabbing her, he asked her what she had done wrong, but she did not understand what was wrong. In a panic, she began to justify herself by saying that it was natural, that a busy person like him should not have a hobby. He asked about her hobby, and she said horse riding, but it seemed like she had messed it up. She thought they could take a boat ride on the lake and then have tea in a cafe. But he found it too ordinary and predictable. She merely countered that this was the accepted approach, and he could come up with something better. On dates, people talk about little things, not about marriage, and that was obvious to her. He asked where they were going, and she replied that it was to the place he wanted to visit most. Yes, a boat ride and a cafe would do, because he remembered her wishes. He simply remembered her desire to go there earlier. But if she didn't want to, they could go another time. But she was determined, and they went to the place that interested her so much. He took her to a flower shop, and she thought with disdain how banal it was. The saleswoman offered him royal roses, but he refused, saying that he did not need flowers. To their surprise, he only asked for a basket, and the saleswoman happily agreed. He just wanted to buy a basket, but it would have been better to buy flowers. She sat down in the basket with a dissatisfied look, not understanding his strange actions. Gently touching the rose, she clucked something unintelligible in embarrassment. He explained that she kept looking at them, and he decided to give them to her. She asked him if he knew what it meant to give someone 3 roses. He had the feeling that he was the only one here who didn't understand what was going on. She said that he should figure it out himself later, and asked him to enlighten her. If she told him right now, he would die of embarrassment. And she buried her face in the roses. They had spent quite a lot of time together, and now a new stage in their relationship awaited them, getting to know each other in small ways. She asked if he would cook it for her, and he confidently agreed. If she's not surprised by sugar instead of salt, then no problem. But it will look appetizing. So many women wanted to seduce him, but she was the first to offer to cook disgusting but delicious food. He said he didn't want her to get her precious hands dirty, so he knows how to flirt, and maybe he's a natural-born Casanova. He asked whether she would tell him her favorite food or not. His favorite food turned out to be jacket potatoes, and she called it delicious. In Siam, potatoes were a delicacy, more valuable than gold and worthy of a royal meal. This reminded him, and he asked how old she was. Princess. 147 years ago, she was cursed, and now she was well over 160. She asked him to take her age into account in the future and treat her more respectfully. She asked to bring her a pillow because the piece of straw was constantly poking her into something. He agreed with a laugh, trying to take his mind off it by focusing on the beautiful roses. He led her to the wall, and she did not understand what he was trying to show her. His arm must have been tired from carrying her in the basket, but he did not hand her over to any of the knights. Although a squad of knights followed them closely, he carried it himself. There used to be an academy over there, and to the left of it is a street where merchants would start their day with smiles. Suddenly, she turned into a human, and he grabbed her in panic, preventing her from falling. He hugged her tightly, pressing her to himself and not believing his eyes. In a rage, he asked her what she was thinking, because they were on top of the fortress wall. Something terrible could have happened, and if she had injured her legs, she would not have been able to protect herself. But the 5 minutes were almost up, and she asked how about listening to the rest when she became a chicken again. Now her heart craved only love, and she kissed him tenderly, giving in to her feelings. 2 days before, a rumor had spread throughout the capital that the emperor had declared his love for Princess Sophia. Everyone around him cooed about nothing but his amazingly romantic nature. But the news of the day was different. 3 roses, you and her highness. What does this have to do with a declaration of love? Orwell breathed a sigh of relief, because with his majesty there was no getting by without a hitch. In the traditions of Croatia, giving 3 roses is a well-known way to declare one's love. Orwell advised him to go out more often, because he didn't even know that giving 3 roses was the same as saying, I love you. He warned him that different numbers of roses had different meanings, and he had to be careful. In his rage, the emperor could not understand why the number of flowers should be of any importance at all. He made sure that his words were included in the history books of the empire. With a good morning, Princess Sophia burst into his life, and their kiss had an incredible effect. The more they kissed, the longer she remained human. And isn't it wonderful to wake up human every day? The method to get rid of the curse worked better and better each time. Before it was only 5 minutes, and now it's 3 hours. She could eat all the human food she wanted, not the damned grains. A few more kisses, and the curse would be completely broken, and she was looking forward to that moment with joy. Suddenly, Milburn, the youngest magician, appeared, and she looked at him with affection. His hair always looked like a broom, but it was still too early for such thoughts. He was surprised that more than 5 minutes had passed, and she was still in human form. Everyone around was eavesdropping, and rumors about her spread throughout the palace. She suggested going to the Ministry of Magic and discussing plans for the future. After hearing a brief summary of recent events, he congratulated her on finally becoming human. The girl thinks with relief about lifting the curse, but her main goal is still not achieved. The young man's sudden question about marriage takes the heroine by surprise, causing her shock. The guy doesn't understand her hesitation because he was sure that love was needed to remove the curse. The heroine, in confusion, tries to explain why marriage with her beloved seems impossible to her. The young man naively insists on marriage, completely oblivious to her inner torment. Her secret thoughts about not having enough love for marriage are interrupted by the sudden appearance of an uninvited guest. The girl's world collapses in an instant when she realizes that their conversation was overheard. The tension builds to a fever pitch as she waits with bated breath for an honest answer. The man mercilessly repeats her innermost words, and humiliation overwhelms the heroine. Panicked, the girl desperately begs him to remain silent, fearing dire consequences. His cold calm is frightening, because he doesn't even try to hide his true motives. The heroine is perplexed as to why he so easily agrees to keep her secret from the emperor. The young man explains with icy indifference that he sees no point in interfering in her affairs. The news of her meeting with His Majesty takes her by surprise, and she realizes that he is avoiding conflict. The sudden transformation into a chicken and her cheeky remark completely destroy the tense atmosphere. "This cheeky bird is clearly making fun of me," adding even more absurdity to the awkward situation. The emperor seems disappointed that his plan to maintain human form has failed. The chicken, without wasting any time, enthusiastically suggests moving on to the most interesting part. The hero, completely confused, tries to understand what 3 rounds are being discussed. The guy is horrified to realize that we are talking about kissing a chicken, and the situation becomes comically absurd. The heroine watches his inexplicable gloom and confusion. The carefully planned dreams of the perfect date in his head came crashing down. A realization strikes her, and she finally understands the true reason for his disappointment. She puts aside her self-pity because her next step is a secret gift for him. Her unexpected transformation into a dove baffles him, but she is determined. His words about her shyness yesterday leave her completely perplexed. His warm, teasing sparks in her a daring plan to make him blush. Her touching explanation hits him where it hurts, leaving him barely able to contain his emotions. His sudden outburst of anger turns into a threatening action, and she is overcome with animal fear. He suddenly cuts off the tension, switching to a cold, businesslike tone, leaving her in shock. His anger clashes with her insolent stubbornness, and their squabble becomes comically childish. He doesn't believe a single word she says, accusing the girl of blatant lies and serious misconduct. She playfully insists that she is right, disarming him with her confidence. The sudden flush on his cheeks gives him away completely, and she sees in him an unprecedented shamelessness. Her dreams of true love are shattered, because she thought they had finally become close. In a fit of anger, she calls him a tyrant and breaks off their relationship forever, flying away. She resolutely heads to her room, ignoring the confused guard. The girl understands that next to him, she turns into a capricious child, and this scares her. A cold doubt creeps into her heart. Does he really just want to hurt her? The pain of her past relationships washes over her, reminding her that no one ever truly loved her. The bitter realization of how terrible her personal life is overwhelms the heroine. The emergence of the powerful Marquis of Bourbon foreshadows new problems and political intrigues. A cold understanding pierces her. This nobleman's insolence is a direct challenge to royal authority. She understands that the division of power in a vast empire has become the cause of this anarchy. Despite all the political odds, she is filled with righteous anger at his impudent behavior. His sudden interest in her causes the girl anxiety and a lot of unpleasant questions. The absurdity of the situation is off the charts when the Marquis doesn't know who to address, a chicken or a commoner. His unexpected proposal, made with feigned respect, takes her by surprise. The sudden postponement of the meeting and his sideways glance at the guard only increase her suspicions. She coldly makes an appointment, but a cunning plan is already brewing in her head. The Marquis's hypocritical smile hides his true intentions, and the girl senses a catch. The sudden adoration from unfamiliar nobles leaves her completely confused. She is stunned and embarrassed by the unexpected attention from the influential ruler. Such pressure and flattery makes it hard for her to breathe, and the guard can barely contain her laughter. The journey to her room becomes a real ordeal, and she calls for help in a panic. The girl is overcome with despair from the endless stream of court intriguers. She is bursting with curiosity as to why everyone is suddenly so desperate to meet her. The shocking news of the emperor's mad love becomes the key to the mystery. She realizes that she has found herself in a golden cage, where her every step is under close scrutiny. The girl feels cornered because politeness doesn't allow her to fight back. The guard tries to explain to her the harsh laws of local etiquette, but the girl no longer listens to her. The thought that in Croatia, refusing to talk is not considered an insult does not bring her any relief. She is terrified of the prospect of drowning in a sea of endless small talk and empty smiles. Fatigue takes its toll, and even the thought of future intrigues cannot drive away sleep. She falls into a short, uneasy slumber, desperate for a break. The dream is interrupted by a strange sensation, and she discovers her paw on an ancient magical book. Her consciousness is carried away to the distant past, where the world was ruled by incomprehensible, primordial magic. A sudden realization hits her. She has always felt the hidden power of this land. The sudden return to reality is accompanied by panicked clucking, which attracts the attention of the guards. A sudden fright of a maid almost leads to tragedy, and the heroine's life hangs by a thread. She bitterly realizes that her innate gift, a connection with the magic of the earth, is irretrievably lost. Over the past 147 years, the world has changed beyond recognition, and ancient knowledge has sunk into oblivion. His genuine surprise at her words about mana flows strikes the girl to the depths of her soul. A sudden revelation explains to her the terrible truth about the disappearance of powerful magicians. He tries to find a logical explanation, but she ruthlessly confirms that the magical flow is disrupted. Her simple answer to his incredulous question is only proof of his own blindness. The young man despairingly admits his inability to feel what is obvious to her. She is overcome with horror at the realization that the greatest mage of the empire is a complete ignoramus in the basics of magic. She reveals to him an ancient secret about the eternal cycle of magical energy in nature. To her, his question sounds like absolute absurdity, highlighting the gap between their knowledge. His question hits the mark, and she horrifiedly assumes that her curse is the cause of a global cataclysm. He grimly confirms her guess, and the weight of this terrible secret falls on his shoulders. Despite her uncertainty, she senses an eerie connection and is determined to get to the bottom of it. His unexpected request for help becomes the first step towards their reluctant but growing alliance. The sincere gratitude in his voice ignites in her a faint hope for mutual understanding. His sly advice to focus on love is just a ploy to give her time without unnecessary pressure. As he leaves, he becomes lost in his thoughts, aware of the mysterious message that changed everything. She decisively rejects romance, because now the fate of the entire empire is at stake. The girl understands that her main enemies are the nobles, and she will have to plunge into the tangle of their intrigues. Misinterpreting his words, she sets herself a new goal that will determine her future actions. His unexpected knock on her own door leaves her with anxious bewilderment. She realizes with annoyance that her chicken cry is just a meaningless sound to strangers. Helplessness overwhelms her, because even a simple door has become an insurmountable obstacle. Desperation makes her forget her manners and demand attention with loud, defiant clucking. In his strange politeness, she senses some kind of catch and an inexplicable change. His drooping back and heavy aura speak of hidden pain that he is trying to suppress. The girl carefully tries to break through the wall of his silence, sensing that something serious has happened. Her indignation grows with every second of his icy disregard and feigned indifference. Panic grips the heroine as she sees him drain a glass of strong wine in one gulp. His quiet apology and flushed face disarm her, revealing a completely different side of him. The sudden guess about the reason for his visit stuns her, mixing hope with skepticism. Her snide remark about his drinking was merely a clumsy attempt to hide her own unease. She can't believe that this blushing young man is the same ruthless conqueror. Her piercing gaze tears away his emperor mask, revealing his vulnerability and hurt. Their verbal duel makes him wonder if he has become a villain in her eyes. Confused and worried, he finally finds the strength to sincerely ask for forgiveness. She accepts his apology, and a fragile truce hangs in the tense air. His desire to continue the conversation fills her with an icy fear of the unknown. He insistently demands her attention, and she understands that she cannot escape this conversation. She takes a sip of wine, gathering her courage to listen to him until the end. The mere mention of the Marquise's name causes a violent and disgusted reaction in her, leaving him in shock. Her strange request to save the emperor's face baffles him, as he is worried about her condition. The unpredictability of his mood drives her to the limit, and she demands that he make up his mind. The girl sarcastically ponders what image she should try on to make him more comfortable. Her cold and pragmatic answer to his question cuts to the quick, revealing his vulnerability. With radiant pride, she reminds him of her high status, turning their relationship into a political alliance. He sadly accepts her terms, but his words reveal a secret desire for a simpler relationship. His piercing gaze makes her doubt his feelings, but he avoids answering. The sudden memory of a talking chicken underlines the surreal nature of what is happening. Her persistent question backs him into a corner, and he realizes she won't back down. His drunken frankness reveals a childhood hurt and an unexpected need for her consolation. His tender and touching compliment about her beauty as a chicken takes her by surprise. His sincere, embarrassed confession pierces her armor, making her heart flutter. He childishly insists on a return compliment, turning a tender moment into a funny squabble. Her awkward compliment about his work is completely out of line with his expectations, leaving him disappointed. Her casual question accidentally reveals his deep loneliness because no one has ever shown such care for him. His cheeky joke about her preferences infuriates her, and she pushes him away in anger. Her accidental mistake with the wine suddenly sends him into a fit of genuine, disarming laughter. Looking at the castle at night, he understands that it is precisely her spontaneity that allows him to throw off the mask of the emperor. A new day throws her into the thick of things, and she resolutely sets out on her first mission at the Ministry of Magic. Her confident lecture on the limitlessness of magic destroys outdated dogmas, opening new horizons. The young man watches with admiration as her knowledge and charisma win over even the most ardent skeptics. A tricky question from the audience challenges her authority, but she meets the challenge with icy calm. She reveals to them the true essence of magic, free from laws and boundaries, striking their imagination. Her inspiring words ignite a spark of delight and an irresistible thirst for new knowledge in her students. His deep thoughts about new ideas are interrupted by a sudden knock, heralding the arrival of uninvited guests. The sudden confusion and fear on the students' faces tells him that there is someone very undesirable standing behind the door. The appearance of a smug stranger with important news instantly poisons the atmosphere in the room. Animal terror grips the old count, and he panics and tries to hide his true feelings. His caustic question in response to flattery only increases the tension, showing who is the real master of the situation here. His caustic attacks on the defenseless student ignite an icy, uncontrollable rage in her. With a fake smile, she boldly stands up for the guy, turning all his anger onto herself. He easily accepts her challenge, ordering everyone to leave and leaving her alone with her fate. She drops all pretense and demands a direct answer from him, knowing that his visit is not a mere coincidence. His smug smirk hints at the unpleasant discovery he made about her after her transformation. He ruthlessly declares that her human voice infuriates him, and her world freezes for a moment in shock. The girl tries to understand his strange logic, asking if he wants to see cold conventionality in her. His furious cry in response to her suggestion only increases her confusion and fear. She is completely confused and tries to understand what he really wants from her, because his behavior is absurd. He changes the subject abruptly, and his ominous hint of gossip makes her heart skip a beat. His confused expression suggests that the rumors he's come to discuss are far more personal than she realizes. Her brazen demand to enforce the law clashes with his furious command to remain silent, and tensions mount. His theatrical despair is so absurd that she, in disbelief, advises him to seek divine help. In the whole world, she alone has the unheard-of audacity to insult the emperor so openly and with impunity. A few days later, the atmosphere is full of tenderness as the maids beg for a little bit of her attention. Suddenly, a thought strikes her, and she finally understands what rumors Lennox was talking about. Surrendering to the moment, she forgets about all her worries, wanting only to bask forever in these gentle arms. Her blissful peace is mercilessly disturbed, and a panicked scream bursts from her chest. Lennox's sudden appearance and his reproachful gaze turn her serene rest into a humiliating scene. The world turns upside down when she sees her exact copies, and reality seems like a dream. His reproaches about the panic she caused are mixed with poorly concealed concern for her. The knowledge that her presence brings only chaos and drama weighs heavily on her. An icy horror pierces her as she realizes that she really was turning into a chicken. His ruthless, albeit honest answer cuts her to the heart, and she cannot hold back her bitter tears. His clumsy attempts to apologize are drowned out by her desperate desire to escape this pain. A friend's seemingly innocent question about loving someone who looks like a chicken hits her where it hurts. An overheard conversation between two ladies-in-waiting confirms her worst fears about the rumors that have spread. She admits with icy calm that she knows about the gossip that circulates around her name. new information about romantic rumors linking her to the emperor leaves her in shock. Her anger flares up with renewed vigor because she sees this not as a coincidence, but as another sophisticated mockery. Her naive belief in fate and love makes her see signs where there may not be any. Her friend's words about the emperor's childish behavior make her think, but she is not yet ready to agree with it. His friend confirms with a smile that his behavior is just the childish prank of a man in love. A sudden realization hit her like an icy shower. She understood why her relationship with him was so unique. Panic grips her as she realizes that she is losing herself around him, turning into a capricious child. Her friend's wise words bring her comfort, reminding her that true love brings out the best in a person. Her friend's ominous promise to reveal all the secrets of the empire to her before his parents' return leaves her in shock. An icy horror grips her because she understands that his parents' visit is not a friendly meeting, but a severe test. In a fit of despair, she rushes to search for the emperor, instinctively seeking protection from the only one she trusts. Their icy calm against the backdrop of her panic suggests that they knew everything in advance, and this is just part of their cunning plan. She wisely understands his mistake, but her determination to make him answer for it only grows stronger. True to his duty, the young man decides to directly point out to the emperor his mistakes in order to prevent future troubles. Their chance meeting becomes a sign of fate for her, and an opportunity to immediately put her plan into action. Her burning gaze and urgent question make him realize that a serious and inevitable conversation is coming. He calmly guides her, and she gratefully accepts his help as she prepares for the decisive meeting. The sudden cry and the hasty orders for magic show the seriousness of her intentions. Their loud shouting across the room seems childish, but it strengthens their union more strongly than any vows. He is surprised to realize that she has forced him to break palace etiquette, and he enjoys this freedom. Tension mounts in the council chamber as the influential duke demands that the emperor take the people's opinion into account. The furious cries of the aristocrats about the unheard-of disregard for the princess turn the meeting into a real political storm. The hypocrisy of the aristocrats infuriates the emperor because they brazenly demand a marriage that they themselves opposed. His icy calm is just the calm before the storm, and he corners them with his direct question. With a devilish grin, he reminds them of the rules, knowing that he cannot force her into marriage. He gracefully turns the tables by declaring that since they insist, they will have to act according to his plan. His cunning proposal to force her to agree to marriage voluntarily leaves the aristocrats in shock. Their suspicions grow because they see her refusal not as a personal decision, but as a cunning political game. He leaves them to deal with the intrigues because now the fate of the empire depends only on his relationship with her. Abruptly cutting off the pointless argument, he leaves, and a knock on her door becomes the beginning of a decisive conversation. His sudden joy and strange praise only make her feel uncomfortable and suspicious of his sanity. Her instinctive rejection and harsh words instantly destroy his good mood, igniting a new conflict. Her cold premonition tells her that his joy will bring her nothing but new problems. She confirms her anger with icy sarcasm because his service turned out to be a real betrayal. Her direct question about his parents' return hits him hard, revealing his lies and cowardice. His sudden theatrical fall to his knees shocks everyone, and her name escapes his lips. An ancient law forces frightened aristocrats to fall on their faces because they cannot stand above their sovereign. In an awkward silence, he tries to take her away, but turning into a chicken only adds absurdity to this drama. He clings to her desperately, begging for a drop of hope, but his weakness only fuels her anger. His cruel joke is the last straw, and she lunges at him in a rage, ready to fight. The unexpected appearance of a new enemy interrupts their quarrel, and she is given an ultimatum she cannot refuse. The threat of surrender hangs in the air, but in her eyes there burns only the flame of defiance and determination. His fiery determination to go all the way proves that her daring provocation was spot on. The emperor's absurd battle with a chicken leaves the stunned aristocrats completely perplexed. After such a shameful performance, the only way out is to pretend that nothing happened. Completely exhausted, the hero bitterly realizes that next to her, he loses all imperial dignity. In the silence after the storm, her sudden question about his parents catches him off guard, bringing him back to harsh reality. He admits with a heavy sigh that rumors of their scandalous relationship have already reached his family. She asks with disbelief whether this is really about that same ridiculous gossip about their fateful connection. His hesitant attempt to reassure her only increases her anxiety because he himself does not know what to expect from his parents. He begins to share his past, recalling the heavy burden of power that he has borne since childhood. Her precise recollections of his embarrassing past cause him to flush with shame and panic and deny everything. Her smirk melts under his counter-threat, and she reluctantly admits defeat. The calm after the storm makes her curious, and she tries to understand its dark hints. He reveals to her the bitter truth about his lonely ascent to the throne and the burden of power. She thoughtfully goes over the facts of his biography in her mind, trying to piece together this complex puzzle. She is struck by another oddity. The emperor himself is preparing his own wedding, breaking all traditions. His father's harsh ultimatum became both a curse and a ticket to life for him. He is worried about his father's upcoming meeting with her because their clash threatens to turn into either war or a strong friendship. Despite all the intrigue, he warmly notes that the people sincerely fell in love with their unusual princess. Servants are already whispering behind their backs, and rumors about their childhood quarrels only amuse the common people. Doubts gnaw at him, and he realizes that to reconcile with his parents, he will need more than just a plan. His tender confidence that her parents will love her gives her a fragile hope for the future. A pensive young man outside the window unwittingly overhears disturbing rumors about sacred white chickens. The emperor realizes with icy irritation that she was the cause of this entire absurd cult. Her innocent curse suddenly turns her into a deity, and the entire city worships the golden idol. He looks with bitter irony at a world that has gone mad and is ready to worship an ordinary chicken. The sudden news that the mysterious they have finally been found dramatically changes the course of their game. Their secret refuge, hidden from the rest of the world, becomes a new, almost insurmountable obstacle in his path. His irritation grows, but he doesn't yet know that the main problem is not in people, but in a powerful force. The shocking news of the extreme level of magic in that place makes his blood run cold. Her serene awakening on his lap was a sharp contrast to the icy horror he had just experienced. His confused question about her strange route betrays his complete lack of understanding of her true motives. The assistant's naive assumption about the emperor's professional incompetence only causes him mild irritation. She breathes a sigh of relief, as this well-timed meeting becomes the perfect cover for her plans. Their hasty farewell is interrupted by his imperious gesture, and she waits with bated breath to see what happens next. Her words sound like an ominous prophecy to him, because he understands that the upcoming reception is not a celebration, but a test. He realizes that preparing for this holiday is not just a duty, but a personal gift and a sign of the highest respect. She proudly recalls her hidden talent, because organizing holidays is her secret passion. His teasing doubts about her abilities are mixed with genuine curiosity and tenderness. Her unexpected knowledge of the language of flowers takes him by surprise, causing him to blush in embarrassment. Suddenly, she is surrounded by a sea of flowers, and she freezes in pure, unadulterated delight at this beauty. The friend watches the princess's reaction with a warm smile, hoping that her gift was to her liking. The luxurious outfits amaze her imagination, and she is delighted to realize the full power and wealth of the empire. She proudly recalls the outfits of her homeland, understanding that clothing is a silent weapon in the political game. Her sincere compliments on the skillful craftsmanship of the embroidery become a balm for the soul of the lady-in-waiting. The emerald dress, as if from a fairy tale, finally conquers her heart, causing a storm of childish delight. Lady Maybelline is pleased to note her keen interest in the process of creating outfits, seeing it as a sign of respect. Behind her smile, there is relief, as the disturbing rumors made her worry about the princess's reaction. A real competition unfolds before her, because she must choose the one who will become her personal dressmaker. She is surprised to learn that this generous gift is merely a clumsy attempt by the emperor to make amends. With wise determination, she abandons her usual style, showing that she is ready to accept the laws and traditions of the new country. Her longing for small talk and familiar life becomes almost unbearable in this foreign country. An unexpected offer to visit a salon ignites a spark of hope in her for a return to normal life. The description of a luxurious and private salon where the elite gathers hints at a world of great intrigue. She firmly asks the guard to leave, preparing for an important and very personal conversation. Putting her romantic plans aside, she takes on human form, because now something more important awaits her. Dropping her mask of insouciance, she prepares to ask a very personal question on which much depends. Lady Maybelline's anxiety and promise of secrecy only heighten the tension before her confession. Her naive question about what a salon is completely destroys the tense atmosphere. Burning with embarrassment, she realizes how far she has fallen behind the social life of this empire. The sudden realization of the vast gap between generations plunges them both into a comical stupor. He is plagued by doubts, because there is no guarantee that her own people will welcome her with open arms. The weight of the discovery weighs on him, as the discovery of the last descendants of her kingdom has only created new, insoluble problems. Their lost village holds the key to the future, but it is unknown whether they will greet it with love or hate. The dark shadow of her past haunts her, for it was she who caused the curse that fell upon her state. He sees her as both the cause and the victim, urging caution until they understand what is in the hearts of her lost people. A sudden revelation makes him realize that the Emperor's strange behavior was only a cover for this terrible secret. His icy fury is directed at the incompetent Count, whose negligence allowed them to remain hidden for so long. With a precise movement, he marks a point on the map, starting a race against time that will bring the culprit to justice. They are forced to keep the dangerous secret for 2 more days, risking that their cunning plan will be revealed prematurely. At the most tense moment, her urgent message bursts in like a bolt from the blue, threatening to destroy everything. His cold command to let her in sounds like a sentence, and a tense anticipation hangs in the air. Her sudden appearance disturbs his fragile calm, and he irritably prepares for a new storm. Her bitter reproach that he hid the truth hits him where it hurts, because she found out everything from others. She furiously accuses him of lying, demanding an answer, but his icy calm only adds fuel to the fire. Her jealous cry about his past and false promises reveals her true, deeply hurt feelings. His confusion seems genuine, but a sudden memory betrays him, and he realizes he's trapped. The memory of a beautiful girl begging him for a date comes back to him like a painful reproach. His cruel ultimatum, forcing her to choose between love and duty, reveals his ruthless nature. Her furious attack becomes the last straw, and he realizes that her naive games have gone too far. Her accusation of manipulation, with a pathetic lie about the first kiss, is a cry of despair and broken hopes. In a fit of rage and resentment, she flies away, leaving behind only feathers and bewilderment. His naive question about jealousy hangs in the air, but his faithful assistant knows that the matter is much more serious. Their torturous relationship is like an endless dance, where every step forward is followed by 2 steps back. The root of their misunderstanding goes back to the past, to the very day when he first tried on the heavy crown. In the early years of his reign, the throne was a coveted goal for many, and endless intrigues were woven behind his back. Among all the contenders, Lady Sherian shone brightest, whose beauty and ambition knew no bounds. The legend of their tragic love, destroyed by family feuds, became the loudest gossip in the entire empire. Her indignation knows no bounds, because the thought that he hid such an important part of his past from her is unbearable. The suspicions only grew stronger, because every lady she approached reacted the same way, with an awkward smile. Their collusion and awkward silence convince her of one thing: he did something stupid, and now everyone is trying to shield him. The lady with the fan can hardly hide her awkwardness at his clumsy advances. The young man speaks smugly about love, not even suspecting how mistaken he is. The hero naively suggests asking an expert for advice, not seeing the truth right in front of him. The chicken begins to suspect that the boy's innocent face is just a clever mask. A terrible misunderstanding dawns on the heroine, and she decides to act. Her heart breaks with anger because of the past that he so carefully hid. The offended girl desperately clings to the idea that a simple apology will fix everything. Hope turns to rage because he never showed up to ask for forgiveness. The morning brings only devastation and the bitter realization of his complete indifference. Her soul is tormented by doubt, making her think that their relationship was just a lie. Despair overwhelms the heroine, causing her to doubt the decisions she has made. The worried maid rushes to bring at least some comfort to her mistress. A sudden invitation from the emperor disturbs the princess's privacy, promising new intrigues. The girl freezes in tension, torn between the given promise and the will of the emperor. The messenger reveals that this is not a request, but a reminder of her previously given consent. The heroine silently accepts her fate, and the messenger leaves, leaving her alone with her choice. With cold determination, the girl prepares for battle, intending to shine at the upcoming party. The maid is shocked by the sudden change in her mistress, sensing a coming storm. A fire of vengeance flashes in the princess's eyes, and she defiantly accepts the gauntlet thrown to her. Meanwhile, the hero, unaware of the consequences, only widens the gap between them. The assistant sees genuine concern for Princess Soria in the emperor's eyes. The hero, hiding his true feelings, justifies his anxiety only by a sense of duty. Her long silence frightens him far more than any words, foreshadowing an approaching storm. The appearance of Soria stuns the young man. He is completely unprepared for such a sight. The girl greets him with an icy smile, full of hidden threat and determination. In the carriage, her heart sank with resentment, because she was waiting for at least a word in her defense. She challenges him, accusing him of cowardice and unwillingness to meet her gaze. The guy coldly warns her about the dangers of the party, ignoring her attempt to talk. This formal gesture of help only highlights the huge gap that has opened up between them. The young man makes small talk, finally dashing her hopes for reconciliation. Every word he says about old connections sounds like an excuse, increasing her suspicions. She tries to cling to the past, but his detachment hurts. His coldness becomes unbearable, and she feels him slipping away from her. Desperation pushes the girl to take a sharp step. She forcibly blocks his path of retreat. With pain in her eyes, the heroine demands an answer as to why he is so stubbornly avoiding her. The young man is stunned by her pressure, pretending not to understand the essence of the accusations. She lists all the grievances, her voice trembling with betrayal and accumulated pain. Her cry about his lies and silence echoes down the corridor, full of bitterness and despair. The new friend tries to reach out to the hero, demanding that the situation be immediately corrected. But the guy remains motionless, his silence speaking louder than any apology. Far from the palace intrigues, on a sun-drenched square, a new fateful meeting is brewing. Her heart aches with the memories of that gentle boy, whom she seems to have lost forever. Memory brings up images of his vows, making the current betrayal unbearably poignant. The painful suspicion of his secret affair burns her, explaining this inexplicable silence. The pain bursts out in a loud curse, falling upon a complete stranger. The flash of rage gives way to quiet sadness, but her passionate impulse has already caught a curious glance. An impudent stranger shamelessly pries into one's soul, asking questions that are too precise and painful. His unexpected reaction and familiarity discourage her, causing her to see him as nothing more than a strange, impudent fellow. His presumptuous question is met with her icy indifference, which conceals her complete confusion. The stranger instantly puts two and two together, realizing that this mysterious girl is a new face in the capital. His guess about her identity, based on metropolitan gossip, takes the girl by surprise. The stranger's loud laughter finally convinces the princess that she is dealing with a real madman. The sudden threat in his words and the steel grip on him made her heart freeze with fear. He decides to play with her, enjoying her confusion and anticipating the fun to come. The brutal truth about the emperor's true love crashes down on her, confirming the worst rumors. His mocking laughter is suddenly interrupted by a blinding flash of inexplicable light. In an instant, she turns into a chicken, leaving the man in complete shock. He is amazed to realize that the most incredible rumors about the princess turned out to be the pure truth. The stranger picks her up, still not believing the surreal nature of what is happening. The man resolutely takes her under his protection, using his status to carry the princess away. The imperial coat of arms in his hand stuns her, for it is exactly like her lover's. A guess flashes in her chicken brain. This coat of arms can only belong to the former emperor. The sudden realization of his identity makes her burn with shame for her recent rudeness. The man generously forgives her, realizing that her breakdown was caused by unbearable pain. He carries her away, but the princess begs him to forget her shameful behavior. The girl regrets her words, desperately wanting to turn back time and fix everything. The stranger offers her help, promising to find a way to test the fidelity of her chosen one. He senses her distrust, because even in the form of a chicken, her eyes are full of suspicion. The man gives her a choice: offering to separate if she no longer believes in salvation. In a desperate move, she clings to him, choosing to trust this mysterious savior. With a new ally, the princess sets off into the very lair of the enemy, entrusting her fate to a stranger. His plan seems simple, but the heroine feels that the slightest mistake could be fatal. Despite all the precautions, their strange masquerade attracts curious and dangerous glances. The man tries to blend into the crowd, but his noble bearing reveals that he is not an ordinary person. His disguise is too weak, and one face that recognizes him could ruin the entire fragile plan. This crazy performance amuses him, and he plays his role with passion, enjoying the risk. He chooses a symbolic location, turning his plan into a daring performance right in front of everyone. A sudden throw into a cage with ordinary chickens becomes a humiliating test for her. In her tiny heart, horror and doubt begin to arise about this eccentric savior's plan. The cruel plan is revealed. He is going to test the emperor's feelings by using her as bait. A magical cataclysm turns people into chickens, sowing panic and terror on the streets of the capital. The emperor is furious when he realizes that his beloved has disappeared from the palace without a trace. Panic grows with every second, because the ticking curse leaves her no chance to survive alone. His own desire to be alone with her becomes the cause of this disaster, exacerbating the feeling of guilt. The painful reminder of his mistake makes the hero freeze, and empty consolations only increase his anxiety. Fear for her clouds his eyes, pushing him to desperate and reckless actions. A sharp warning from his assistant stops him, as one wrong step could cause her to run away forever. Attempts to calm him with logic are shattered by the wall of irrational horror that has gripped the emperor. The unexpected fact about the sacred status of white chickens gives him a fragile ray of hope in this darkness. Just as he convinces himself of her safety, alarming news bursts into the chambers, destroying the fragile peace. The shocking news of the former emperor's sudden visit hits the young man like a bolt from the blue. Soria's presence at his side makes the visit a daring public challenge that cannot be avoided. The tension in the room rises as the emperor demands an explanation, barely containing his anger. His irritation grows due to the guard's negligence, but deep down, he knows that this is another of his father's tricks. A helpless frustration grips the young man, because his father has always been a master at circumventing any rules. Close friends receive clear instructions, and the atmosphere is filled with a premonition of impending family drama. Even history remembers this ruler as an unpredictable genius whose actions were impossible to predict. The hero smiles bitterly, realizing that the rumors about Soria served as the perfect excuse for his father to intervene. He gives orders in preparation for the arrival of the entire family, which will only complicate an already explosive situation. With a heavy sigh, he hopes for a miracle, but a distant sound already foreshadows the beginning of inevitable chaos. The crowd's enthusiastic whispers only add fuel to the fire, turning everything into a grand spectacle. No longer able to contain the rumors, the young emperor takes center stage at this humiliating spectacle. A tense meeting between father and son promises to be stormy as their long-standing rivalry reaches its climax. His anger at his father flares up again, but the desperate pecking of a chicken tries to reach his heart. In the center of a brewing conflict, she desperately tries to prevent disaster by flapping her wings. A cruel test has been thrown. Prove your love in front of everyone, or forever remain a traitor. Trapped in a cage, she desperately calls for help, drowning in chaos and panic among the other birds. Bitter regret overwhelms her, because this crazy plan turned out to be a trap from which she must escape. The thought of his tender confession in the midst of this shame makes her hot and cold, mixing hope with shame. She takes a step forward, ready for the inevitable, because his heart, she believes, will recognize her in any guise. The crowd's humiliating whispers cast doubt on the emperor's feelings, as he is holding the wrong bird in his hands. Her chicken heart boils with rage when she hears herself compared to another. Deeply offended, she attacks him, not believing that he could have made such a mistake. In a panic, he tries to correct his mistake, but the moment has already passed, and the shame cannot be washed away. A sudden downpour and magic reveal the truth, but in the chaos, no one can hear it. This public comedy of errors will go down in history as a joke, forever tarnishing their names. Chronicles will embellish this day, turning humiliation into a romantic tale of great love. But reality is cruel. Their feelings became a laughingstock for everyone who watched this circus. rumors will spread throughout the world, distorting the truth and creating a legend far removed from reality. Far from the capital, a devoted knight vows to defend her honor, even if it means going against the whole world. Duke Peliar can no longer sit idly by, while the princess's honor is trampled in the mud. The young knight objects, but the duke is not concerned with the curse, but with the humiliation she is being subjected to. Rumors of boundless love were replaced by poisonous whispers of total disrespect for her. Jared's heart aches as rumors of her tears and his betrayal grow louder. The last straw is a cruel prank with chickens, staged to make a laughingstock of her. The knight is horrified to realize that the emperor is deliberately turning her into an outcast and an object of ridicule. The most terrible guesses are confirmed. Everyone believes that her curse has become just a funny toy for him. This public farce, started by the father and taken up by the son, crosses all boundaries of cruelty. The emperor's humiliating inability to distinguish her from other birds becomes a symbol of his betrayal. The duke jumps up, his patience snapping, because this cruel mockery is no longer a joke, but a declaration of war. The heavens seem to mourn her fate, bringing down rain as a sign of divine wrath on the cruel emperor. The news of her humiliation spread like wildfire, igniting a flame of righteous anger in the hearts of the faithful. The devoted duke can no longer remain silent. He vows to rescue the princess from the hands of her tormentor. At last, the inaction is over, and the young knight prepares with delight for the coming battle. The duke takes a terrible oath, declaring himself the protector of the one who was betrayed and abandoned by the emperor himself. Meanwhile, in the palace, they are trying to console her, assuring her of the fidelity of the one who trampled her heart. She desperately wants to believe in his innocence, but bitter memories haunt her. His icy silence in response to her direct accusations still rings louder in her ears than any confession. The evasive answers and confusion of the other ladies only confirmed her worst suspicions. Remembering all this, she understands that doubts were inevitable, because all the evidence screamed about his betrayal. A loyal friend bitterly realizes that her palace naivety was the cause of this tragedy. Evil tongues in the palace sow the poison of doubt, and the princess trembles with powerlessness and fear. Her last hope that he would look for her is shattered by the cruel reality. A terrible guess pierces her heart. His mistake was not accidental, but intentional. The humiliating discovery of the nature of the curse finally breaks her, causing her to fall limply onto the pillow. The assistant tries to dispel her suspicions, but words are powerless against the pain of betrayal. He decides to tell her the whole truth, hoping that understanding will heal her broken heart. The cruel reality of high society is that no one loves the emperor. They only want to take advantage of him. She can't believe his reputation is so bad. Even his friend talks about it. A new thought arises in her head. Perhaps his coldness is just the armor of a workaholic. Her awkward question about his male health leaves the assistant shocked and blushing. Burning with shame for her tactlessness, she realizes that the reason for his loneliness lies elsewhere. The emperor's friend finally decides to reveal the simple and sad truth about his reputation. His icy aloofness at balls and his eternal appraising gaze scare off any lady. He turns every conversation into an interrogation, interested in politics and alliances rather than feelings. She realizes with horror that for him, communication is work, not a way to start a relationship. The Empress's vacant throne is a direct consequence of his inability to be anything other than a ruler. This discovery gives her hope. If he had no one, then he couldn't have cheated on her. She remembers his kind heart, but her memory immediately brings back his threats at their first meeting. The last doubts are dispelled by the memory of the promised kiss that he never performed. Her heart aches from the injustice, because behind his coldness, she sees a care that is inaccessible to others. Breaking news interrupts her thoughts, heralding a new twist in this convoluted story. A desperate message from Lady Sheridan, willing to do anything for her honor, adds to the drama. She bitterly realizes that only she has revealed the true, amazing nature of the lonely emperor. A sudden determination makes her forget about everything, because now she must be next to him. The sight of his dejected figure, tormented by guilt, makes her heart ache for him. Tenderness and compassion overwhelm her as she looks at this misunderstood and lonely ruler. Her timid apology for her suspicions becomes the first step towards healing their fractured relationship. Shame burns her, because she dared to doubt a man who can barely cope with love for one. His generous forgiveness, shifting the blame onto others, stuns her with its unexpected kindness. The inexplicable charm of this chicken strikes him to the very heart, causing him to doubt his sanity. Her warmth in his arms awakens completely new, frighteningly tender feelings in him. He is finally convinced of his own madness, because his heart trembles with love for an ordinary bird. Suddenly, he is pierced by a terrible guess about what exactly he has been touching all this time. Shame burns the emperor when he realizes the full familiarity of his innocent touches to the lady. Burning with embarrassment, the young man tries to find the words to apologize for his behavior. He awkwardly makes excuses for his father's eccentricity, trying to smooth over the awkwardness of the moment. Her cheerful laughter lightens the mood, letting him know that she holds no grudge against him. She gently reproaches him for not being able to recognize her, but he finds his own explanation for this. The girl agrees with feigned seriousness, because the treachery of chickens is now an indisputable fact for her. For the first time in a long time, he laughs genuinely, finding unexpected and pure happiness in this chaos. The realization comes too late, and now he is drowning in regrets about his mistakes and his father's crazy antics. This whole terrible day was doomed from the very beginning, and she had a bitter premonition of its nasty ending. He strokes her tenderly, ironically accepting his fate, to fall in love with the Empress in the guise of a chicken. His touching concern for a new crown for her makes her heart flutter with embarrassment and joy. With his clumsy offer to find her a worthy lady, he only proves how little he still understands her. Her unexpected desire to help him in return stuns him, because he did not expect such kindness from her at all. In the beam of light, he freezes, struck by her generosity, unable to believe what is happening. With firm determination, the emperor accepts her challenge, not fully understanding what he is getting into. The fragile moment immediately crumbles under the weight of his responsibilities, bringing them both back to harsh reality. Endless work drives him into a trap of despair, from which there is no visible exit. The marriage proposal sounds like a mockery, because it will not solve his main problem. Thoughts about the future only deepen his melancholy, because real relief will come too far in the future. The reminder of my father gives me a glimmer of hope that in 10 years everything might change. A sudden question from his friend brings him back to his recent challenge to the princess. The hidden threat in his voice makes the assistant freeze, because the emperor demands an excuse from him. Deeply offended, the friend furiously swears his allegiance, not understanding the reason for doubt. The emperor cuts him off abruptly, playing on his feelings and enjoying his unlimited power. The oath of family honor proves his sincerity. He did not lie to the princess even a single word. But one small doubt that he was hiding could become fatal before the upcoming coronation. The emperor impatiently cuts off the empty flattery, demanding that his friend get down to business without delay. An innocent question about his male health takes the young man by surprise, hinting at his friend's hidden doubts. His barely contained rage is bursting at the seams, but his assistant only nervously jokes it off. The mere mention of Soria's name explodes his anger, revealing the true cause of his anxiety. He quickly cools down, but the icy tone reveals that this dangerous conversation is far from over. Urgent news from the south brings a new threat. Drought pushes desperate people to crazy actions. Superstitions and bloody rituals become the last hope of a people who have lost faith in their ruler. A cold horror grips him at the thought that the next step will be human sacrifice. Rumors about the search for the witch confirm his worst fears, because the crowd has already found the culprit. A terrible guess pierces him. The cursed chicken woman is the perfect victim for mad people. Her mysterious magic makes her the perfect scapegoat for the witch-hungry crowd. The emperor immediately takes control of the situation, summoning all his vassals for a decisive blow. The heavy question hangs in the air. How long can the hostile legacy of her ancestors be hidden from her? The icy confirmation of the attack on his soldiers proves that hatred for her has already shed first blood. Poisonous rumors about the princess reached the farthest corners, fanning the flames of old feuds. He bitterly realizes that his beloved has become the main target in this cruel political game. The inability to predict the enemy's next move forces him to balance on the brink of risky decisions. Fear for her outweighs everything, and he gives the order to protect Soria at any cost, even the most terrible. His ruthless decree to immediately destroy any threat reveals his dark side, born of love. The faithful friend freezes in horror, because the real battle will not be with the magicians, but with the princess's heart. Her kind heart was faced with a cruel choice. Would she allow her people to die? The emperor brushes aside personal problems because something much greater is at stake. Meanwhile, in a distant kingdom, a desperate solution is sought that could change the course of history. All hope rests on a single duke whose power can activate ancient magic. But the curse still binds her body, preventing her from personally fighting the darkness that consumes the land. The only way out is a giant magic circle, a last desperate measure to save the kingdom. The ideal plan, in theory, requires not only magicians, but also a willingness to follow his cruel orders. But the harsh reality destroys all hopes, and her weakened body cannot withstand the stress. Weakness overcomes her, because such a complex ritual requires years of preparation and knowledge. His sudden appearance and firm confidence give her a fragile ray of hope in this impenetrable darkness. Fatigue from the overwhelming burden of work falls on her fragile shoulders, forcing her to look for excuses. She lists her impossible tasks, but the young assistant doubts her role as a savior. His naive admiration for the emperor paints the image of an invincible hero who does not need anyone's help. Her memories of his ridiculous fears make her doubt his strength and hide the truth. The girl shares the bitter wisdom that in love, brute force gives way to something else. She tries to explain to him that true intimacy is built on care and mutual concessions. The princess tries to convince herself and him that their relationship is just a light infatuation and not true love. Her discussions of passion only further confuse the young man, who does not see the difference between attraction and love. With unexpected passion, she proves that love can transform even irritation into tenderness. A sudden revelation strikes her, and around him she loses all her confidence, revealing a vulnerable heart. The mad beating of her heart betrays her secret feelings, but a knock on the door interrupts her revelations. His sudden appearance with a serious face promises the conversation she has been so afraid and waiting for. His piercing gaze makes her feel embarrassed, awakening a storm of completely new emotions in her. The silence deepens as he announces two serious topics that brook no delay. The unusual seriousness in his voice frightens her to the depths of her soul, making her expect the worst. The very first item on the agenda about his masculine strength plunges her into complete stupor and bewilderment. He tries to dispel ridiculous rumors, not even suspecting what a storm of embarrassment his directness causes. Her patience snaps and she jumps up, ready to run away from this unbearably awkward conversation. In a desperate move, the girl shuts his mouth, just so as not to hear the continuation of this madness. Her cry that she already understood everything completely destroys his composure and turns everything into a farce. His heart pounds wildly at her touch, and the question of his true intentions echoes in his head. She is relieved to close the awkward topic, but his thoughtful look suggests he is not at peace. He teases her tenderly, and she, burning with shame, hides her face, promising not to doubt anymore. Their light-hearted banter about their mutual madness only highlights the fragility of the moment before a serious conversation. He returns to her words about refusal, and this sudden question makes her freeze with tension. His thoughts drift back to their original agreement, where there was no room for marriage or feelings. Their alliance was just a deal. She gets the kingdom, and he solves the problem of drought in the south. They both stood on the edge of the abyss, but even after the plan failed, no one dared to take a step forward. Confident that she does not share his feelings, he decides to take a desperate step and ask her directly. He realizes that their relationship has reached a dead end and, with a pounding heart, decides that it is time to act. The fear of rejection paralyzes him more than any battle because his vulnerable heart is at stake. Gathering all his will into a fist, he asks the main question on which his entire future fate depends. Her carefree smile in response becomes a death sentence for him, confirming his worst fears. He cowardly retreats, deciding to hide his feelings because he is completely unprepared for the blow of rejection. She cleverly avoids a direct answer, transferring his personal question into the plane of political choice. Her demands on her future husband sound like the terms of a business contract, where there is no room for love. He easily agrees to her terms, which completely confuses her with his submissiveness. His sly smile makes her wary, because behind this simple conversation, there is some kind of game. She describes her ideal, a simple, kind, and understanding person, without even dreaming of more. His contented look amazes her, Because for most people, her modest dreams are an unattainable luxury. His words about her low standards hit her hard, because she considers her demands to be quite reasonable. He easily declares that he can live up to her ideal, which completely confuses her. The conversation outside the window reminds her that her husband's competence is a bonus, not the main goal. His radiant appearance and self-confidence make her feel like she is in mortal danger. She cleverly changes the subject, reminding him of the second important topic that he never mentioned. He realizes with annoyance that he got carried away by their game and forgot about the main reason for their meeting. His sudden seriousness alarms her, because he is about to reveal something important. He decides to no longer hide the truth about her people, who may be yearning for her freedom. With bated breath, she hears the big news. He has found her long-lost descendants. In a fit of uncontrollable joy, she rushes towards him, forgetting all propriety and boundaries. She is filled with delight and does not let him finish, demanding immediate answers. A sudden and sincere declaration of love takes him by surprise, disarming and shocking him. He drowns in her arms, embarrassed to the limit, unable to utter a word because of her pressure. Pure gratitude and happiness shine on her face, illuminating everything around with its sincerity. Her torrent of admiration and love drives him to comic despair, and he begs her to stop. His heart was ready to burst out of his chest, unable to withstand such a barrage of her sudden tenderness. Away from this emotional whirlwind, loyal knight Megan calmly watches the proceedings. The princess asks a painful question about a people who have never seen their homeland. The knight humbly admits that, as a foreigner, she has no right to judge such deep connections. She comes to the conclusion that blood and heritage mean more than land, uniting even strangers. She remembers her people, where pride in origin was more important than any status. The personal example of her parents gives her hope that her people have also retained the same loyalty to their roots. But years of exile and loneliness make her doubt, turning her hopes into illusions. She bitterly understands that almost a century and a half is too long a period to preserve memory. Her current appearance only deepens her despair, because who would recognize a princess in an ordinary chicken? With a heavy heart, the girl decides to let go of her expectations and let fate take its course. The thought of the inevitable decline of any state makes her think about the fate of her kingdom. She is surprised to discover that someone has already taken over her favorite place for thinking. The unexpected appearance of the former emperor takes her by surprise, disturbing her solitary thoughts. His cheerful and carefree tone conceals the true reason for his visit, adding intrigue. He awkwardly apologizes for that stupid chicken story, trying to smooth over the tension. His harsh criticism of her son finds an unexpected response in her heart. Her unexpected generosity confuses him, because he expected a completely different reaction. In the silence of the sunset, she asks him about regrets, penetrating into the very depths of his soul. She takes a bold step, assuming that his greatest regret is handing over power too early. Her insightful question catches him off guard, causing him to look at her in a new way for the first time. She recalls her lonely past, when faith in her own destiny was her only support. In a moment of despair, when she loses faith, he brings her back to reality by reminding her of her people. His words about what he knows about her people stun her, revealing him to be a cunning strategist. His sudden offer of an excursion tomorrow sounds like a promise to reveal all the secrets. His words about hope spark curiosity in her, despite all her doubts. He subtly hints at her helplessness, suggesting action instead of empty contemplation. Her distrustful ultimatum is met with his presumptuous promise, full of hidden intrigue. He easily puts an entire empire on the line, proving the seriousness of his intentions and shocking everyone around him. His familiarity and complete lack of manners cause a real culture shock in her faithful companion. She accepts his game, agreeing to the adventure, but with a condition that keeps his crown. Tired of arguing, she allows herself to be carried away by him, realizing that his persistence is just concern. The sudden appearance of the emperor interrupts their escape, and silent fury can be seen in his eyes. The father coldly reminds his son of her high status, justifying his actions by political necessity. The son snatches her from his father's hands, and his anger speaks of jealousy, not of protecting her honor. His rage is not caused by politics, but by fear for it, but his father only mocks his concern. With a cynical grin, her father points out the emptiness of her legacy, devaluing his anger and her status. The son's harshness shocks the father, who does not recognize his obedient child in this fierce protector. His whole world narrows down to her alone, and he anxiously searches her eyes for an answer, completely ignoring his father. His genuine excitement overwhelms her, revealing a new, vulnerable, and tender side of his soul. This unusual care makes her heart flutter, and she sees him as a completely different person. Her father's sudden departure throws her into panic as he leaves her alone to deal with the consequences. With a smug grin, he confirms her fears, leaving her to be torn apart by her angry son. Despair pushes the emperor to a childish plea because he is left alone with the chaos of his father's intrigue. Revealing the scars of his past, he forbids her from communicating with her father, trying to protect her from his pain. Her insight into his father doesn't change the essence of the matter, because an order is an order, and she is not ready to obey it. A bold rebellion flares up in her chicken heart, and she boldly declares her independence. His sudden change in tone from commanding to pleading disarms her, revealing his vulnerability. Her heart beats wildly from his vulnerable gaze, because she never suspected that he could be like this. Disarmed by his sudden tenderness, she easily agrees to his simple request, but a shadow of doubt darkens his face when he remembers her promise to someone else. The fateful news of her deal with his father hits him like a lightning bolt, leaving him in shock. His categorical prohibition sounds like a death sentence, but she has already set out on this dangerous path. With royal dignity, she reminds him that her word is law, and breaking it threatens war. His last desperate plea is shattered by her silent determination, and he realizes that he has lost. She tries to negotiate, gently reminding him of her promise, not suspecting what a storm of jealousy this will cause. His sudden and sharp question about why she calls his father by his title pierces her with an icy chill. With childish resentment in his voice, he reproaches her for injustice because she keeps him at a distance, unlike his father. Taken by surprise by his unexpected vulnerability, she clumsily tries to defend herself behind the wall of palace etiquette. With a powerful gesture, he breaks down all barriers, granting her the exclusive right to call him by his first name. The idea of such closeness seems frighteningly alien to her, and she hesitates on the threshold of this new intimacy. Her mind still clings to formalities, reminding her that they are strangers, not related by blood. Afraid of hurting him, she still decides, and his tender response to her timid whisper melts her heart. His dazzling smile completely disarms her, making her chicken heart beat wildly. She recalls with irony how she was once indifferent to his beauty, which now drives her crazy. She realizes that behind his rudeness lies an amazing beauty that she had not noticed before. His disarming smile, directed straight at her, becomes a real test for him. She panics and demands that he stop smiling like that, because her heart can't handle the strain. Their playful bickering over who is to blame for her embarrassment only highlights their growing closeness. She boldly switches to the informal form of address, and this simple word finally destroys all the remaining walls between them. His decisive gesture silences her, and in this silence, he finally finds words. With seriousness in his voice, he warns her of the danger that lurks behind his father's kindness. She realizes with horror that this strange family is taking their empire too lightly. Embarrassed to the limit, he tries to hide his awkwardness with a joke, but his blush gives him away. She agrees to his request with royal dignity, but on one condition that will protect her from his wrath. His firm promise, given with a heavy heart, seals their fragile and dangerous alliance. She reminds him that beneath her chicken-like appearance lies a power he seems to have completely forgotten. Her magical power and his father's swordsmanship are two legends that may have to clash. With bold confidence, she declares that in a real fight, she would easily defeat the renowned master. She easily abandons his protection, and this self-confidence leaves him in an uneasy silence. All his arguments collapse before one simple fact. He is against it because he is desperately afraid for her. Unable to cope with his anxiety, he drains the glass in one gulp, shocking her with this sudden display of weakness. In a drunken stupor, he confuses her with his father, spilling out all his old pain and resentment. He roughly pushes her away, not realizing that at this moment, she is the only one who is ready to help him. The last straw is the realization that he has just drunk the last bottle of priceless wine. Her indignation at his lack of ceremony results in a comical lecture on propriety. He mercilessly destroys her illusions, but she desperately clings to the remnants of her feminine dignity. Their childish squabble reaches its climax when the servants witness this absurd spectacle. Behind their backs, loyal servants see something more than just a quarrel, noticing sparks of budding feelings. The wise observer waits with hope for their eternal disputes to finally develop into true love. Burning with shame after her outburst, she doesn't know how to look him in the eyes now. His disarming smile becomes torture for her, making her heart flutter against her will. She drowns in a wave of embarrassment, mentally cursing him for the beauty that affects her so unfairly. In a desperate attempt to escape her feelings, she decides to take a wild flight to freedom. Her epic escape ends in a suffocating embrace, turning drama into comedy. Alarming cries behind the door foretell the appearance of an uninvited guest, disturbing the fragile privacy. The princess waits with curiosity, wondering who this impudent fellow is who dared to cause such a commotion. Lord Theos's sudden appearance at the door comes as a complete and unpleasant surprise to everyone. His reproachful look makes her heart stop, because she is completely unprepared for this meeting. In a fit of anger, she accuses him of betrayal, because he abandoned her at the most inopportune moment. With a heavy sigh, she decides to end the pointless argument, realizing that his logic is beyond her understanding. Her sudden transformation into a human leaves him baffled, as he was completely unprepared for such a turn of events. He insists on her chicken form, not realizing that her human form is her true form. She ironically declares that her real self is a beautiful girl, not a damned bird. An unexpected order from the emperor interrupts their argument, establishing new rules that are humiliating for her. The threat of the sword pointed at him hangs in the air, and the princess freezes in horror at such audacity. His poisonous hint about the night they spent together comes as a bolt from the blue for her. The knight's furious denial shakes the walls, and the princess finds herself at the epicenter of this storm. He imperiously demands privacy, pushing aside her faithful guard and leaving her defenseless before him. His indecent offer to eavesdrop on the secrets of the imperial bedroom makes the knight burn with shame. Reluctantly, the guard retreats, but his doubts about the emperor's reaction only increase the tension. The click of the lock cuts her off from the rest of the world, leaving her alone with the man who holds her fate in his hands. In a panic, she rushes to him, accusing him of lying, but her words are drowned out by his icy calm. With a condescending grin, he hints at his son's inexperience, which completely confuses her. The shocking revelation of the emperor's complete innocence makes her rush after the departing man. He offers her a secret path, leading her away from prying eyes into a world of intrigue and dangerous adventures. The realization that they are now fugitives creates fear in her soul, because she is not ready to fight with her former comrades. In a desperate attempt to avoid his company, she lies about her plans with the emperor, playing with fire. His caustic allusion to the stage of their relationship with the emperor only adds to her utter confusion. She cleverly changes tactics, proposing an official visit to his wife in order to buy precious time. He fondly remembers his freedom-loving wife, who is completely alien to all palace conventions. He easily destroys her polite pretext, making it clear that his wife does not care about empty formalities. His ostentatious generosity irritates her, but she feels that this is just another clever trap. His face darkens, and he gives her an icy warning, tearing off the mask of feigned good nature. She is stunned by his threat, but his feigned surprise suggests that he is preparing a new, cruel blow for her. His poisonous words about her reputation become a cold shower, returning her to the cruel reality. With a heavy heart, she admits that her return does not promise her a warm welcome in this nest of vipers. He reminds her with a grin that the Empress's throne is a tasty morsel for which many are ready to fight. His apparent generosity is just a mask hiding his own goals in this complex game. She remembers his wall of silence, which forced her to search alone for the truth among the poisonous rumors. With cold determination, the girl accepts his challenge, realizing that he is luring her into a deadly trap. His offer is sweet as poison, and she suspects that this journey may become a path to an eternal cage for her. A sudden worry for the emperor pierces her, and she realizes that there is something important behind this farce. The decision is made, and he urges her on, dragging her along on a secret escape full of uncertainty. His crazy jump out of the window becomes for her not just an escape, but a desperate step towards freedom. Fatigue from endless work and heartache knocks him down on his desk. He is drowning in regrets for his actions, but his friend only ironically welcomes him into the cruel world of love. His strange questions about the princess's behavior baffle the assistant, as he has never seen anything like it. With complete bewilderment, the friend states the fact that no lady in her right mind would behave like that. The emperor complains in despair about his inability to create a romantic atmosphere. But this is not the main problem. With bitter irony, he asks what his married friend can possibly know about love while he himself is single. The assistant decides to take a bold step, asking permission to give him advice as an old and faithful friend. The emperor looks at him suspiciously, sensing that something important is hidden behind this politeness. With a heavy heart, he gives his consent, promising to listen to any advice without consequences. A friend, with a beaming look, gives him simple and brilliant advice, threatening him with reprisals in case of disobedience. He looks back with irritation at his past relationships, realizing that the current chaos surpasses everything. His friend recalls with nostalgia his awkward first meeting with his wife, which is still fresh in his memory. With a touch of arrogance, he states the fact that he, unlike the emperor, was able to build his own happiness. His smug grin and insolent words become the last straw for the emperor. In a fit of despair, the emperor orders the most luxurious bouquet, deciding to act rather than talk. The friend freezes in shock, not believing that the emperor has finally decided to make a real declaration of love. A loud command for a bouquet of roses echoes throughout the palace, marking the beginning of his desperate adventure. Memories of attempts to make an impression that always ended in failure come to his mind. A nightmarish image of his past formal attire makes him question his own sanity. The unexpected revelation that his mother chose the outfit only adds to the comical nature of the situation. His modest desire for a bouquet and privacy turns into the grandiose spectacle he so feared. The servants insist on observing all formalities, because this historic moment cannot be missed. The artist's appearance finally ruins his plans for modest recognition, turning him into a public show. With determination in her eyes, the mother promises to help him turn this moment into an unforgettable romantic event. Resigned to his fate, he vows never to give in to his friend's persuasion again. But it is too late. With a bouquet in his hands, he approaches the matter with all seriousness, but a cruel disappointment awaits him. At the most crucial moment, she disappears, leaving him alone on the stage of this colossal failure. He gives orders in a rage, trying to find her, but there is desperation and humiliation in his voice. Meanwhile, the artist, without wasting a minute, begins to paint a picture of this tragicomic moment. Ironically, the painting about his failure would be called The Emperor Tormented by Love. His decision to remain in the shadows puzzles her, because he never saw fit to introduce her. The Marquise's insolence in choosing another guest takes him by surprise, hinting at hidden intrigues. Behind the mask of an eccentric lies a cunning strategist whose motives remain a mystery to everyone. He understands that he was dealing with an open book, but the real horror is instilled by someone who cannot be read. The servant makes the bold suggestion that this entire humiliating scene was staged by Lord Theos himself. Suspicion falls on him, because behind his strange behavior, there is something more than just a whim. Her embarrassed look, full of awkwardness, suggests that she has become an unwitting accomplice to his plan. The appearance of the fawning Marquis of Dalton only confirms that this house is full of lies and hidden motives. His brazen attempt to atone for his guilt with gold only highlights the baseness of this man. Such a generous price for silence suggests that something very important is hidden behind this simple visit. The mysterious guest begins from afar, mentioning a recent visit and some disturbing discovery. He describes with irony a warehouse full of strange materials, making the Marquis nervous. The Marquis tries to hide his lies behind a proud smile, boasting about his weapons business. He confidently states that all these materials are just raw materials for his thriving trading company. But his guest tears off the mask, throwing out an icy accusation he is preparing not for production, but for war. The subordinate, in a panic, tries to intervene, but his ignorance only deepens his suspicions. The former emperor sarcastically presses on his greed, knowing that this is his weakest point. The Marquis finally relaxes, mistakenly seeing his guest not as an accuser, but as a potential ally. In the silence of the carriage, Lord Theos ponders what this ambitious merchant is really thinking. He explains that the Marquis made a fatal mistake in mistaking him for a fellow war-hungry fool. He knows about everything, about secret soldiers, hidden weapons, and the brewing conspiracy that threatens the empire. His plan is not to act rashly, but to wait and nip the threat in the bud. He acts cautiously, because in such a vast country, it is not so easy to arrest an influential marquise. Her naive assumption of fast travel only highlights how little she knows about this empire. Unlike her small kingdom, this vast country takes months just to travel around. But it's not just a matter of size, because in the shadows, dissatisfied people thrive, yearning to return to the old order. Traveling around the country, he saw with his own eyes the growing discontent and thirst for change. It is the Marquis of Dalton, blinded by greed and ambition, who becomes the main threat to the throne. In his eyes, the descendants of Sayen become the enemy, the perfect scapegoats to start a war. She realizes with horror that he is going to start a war right where her people are hiding. His words about the Marquise deliberately creating a war reveal the full depth of his betrayal. The realization that he is leaking information to his enemies fills her with righteous anger and horror. He sarcastically praises her intelligence, but his words are laced with blatant mockery. With royal dignity, she puts him in his place, reminding him of her true status. He admits with a smile that the walk was useful, because it opened her eyes to the truth. She doesn't understand how this brutal truth can be connected to her personal worries and fears. He subtly reminds her of her main problem, what she will do if her own people reject her. His question about the citizens' satisfaction with the current emperor is a direct hint at a brewing rebellion. He offers her a tricky choice, to stay with a people who will not accept her, or to choose those who will accept her. Her silent consent confirms his guess. She will become the ideal empress, ready to do anything for power. Her direct question about the benefits of power takes him by surprise, because he himself did not like being an emperor. She tries to understand with bewilderment why he gave up power for the sake of peace, if he didn't like ruling so much. His flippant statement about traveling for pleasure only increases her suspicions. He explains to her the harsh laws of the empire, where the heir cannot rule until he comes of age. She cynically understands that he simply ran away from responsibility, tired of the endless bureaucracy. This discovery makes her reconsider her opinion of him and trust the words of her lover. Meanwhile, the emperor corrects her with offense, reminding her of his name, not his title. The tense atmosphere in the palace, the sidelong glances of the servants and the lined-up soldiers frighten her to the depths of her soul. She doesn't understand the reason for such hostility, but she feels that she did something wrong. Her return to the palace, accompanied by the former emperor, comes as a complete surprise to everyone. His childish resentment at her for not calling him by name leaves her with only slight bewilderment. She tries to justify herself, but his pouty appearance and the behavior of a capricious child leave her speechless. His smug grin suggests he's enjoying his small victory, not missing a beat. He easily notices her trembling, and she realizes that her pathetic attempt at lying has failed miserably. With a heavy heart, she prepares to tell him the truth, which she is sure will shock him. But her revelation about the Marquise's betrayal does not make any impression on him, because he already knows everything. He closes the topic with relief, believing that since nothing happened, there is nothing to talk about. His friend, watching this scene, thinks with bitterness that the emperor missed the perfect chance to propose to her. The words about the visit having no consequences make him think about what really happened. He abruptly changes the subject, and his serious tone suggests that her frivolous deal with the Marquis is not just a game. He gives her one last chance to retreat, offering a way out of this dangerous game, but she has already made her choice. With quiet determination, she rejects his offer, for the fate of her people has now become her personal pain. She firmly declares her unbreakable connection with her descendants, leaving him no chance to convince her otherwise. He knew she would choose this path, and his gaze was a mixture of annoyance and silent admiration. In his eyes, she is a radiant queen, fiercely devoted to her people and her lost kingdom. Fear for her makes his heart clench, and he begs for her trust, not wanting her to sacrifice herself in vain. With royal pride, she rejects his protection, refusing to hide while the fate of her people is at stake. Having resigned himself to her stubbornness, he wearily tries to convey to her that this battle is much more dangerous than it seems. He gives her a harsh warning, hinting at humiliating rumors that could destroy her reputation. He is burning with shame, unable to admit to her the chaos and shame that occurred in her absence. Her direct question about how bad things are takes him by surprise, and he cowardly avoids answering. She, with a touch of irony, pushes him to confess, playing on his pride and unwillingness to give in. With comical importance, she praises herself, forcing him to acknowledge her incredible popularity. She reminds him of her royal past, hinting that she would put his proposal above all else. His question about the fate of her kingdom makes her think about the bitter truth. A queen without her people is nothing. He confronts her with a brutal choice: to give up her dream for the sake of a people who don't expect her, or to choose him. She recalls his selfless quest, realizing that he was driven not by a thirst for glory, but by compassion. The realization that he is a true ruler, ready to make sacrifices, makes her look at him in a new way. She remembers the words that he shouldn't have risked himself because no one else would have dared to do that. With tender determination, she asks him to try to love her more, offering to start their fairy tale anew. Her tender embrace and timid hope for a fairy tale ending envelop him in the warmth of long-awaited happiness. The next morning, the confused assistant does not understand what kind of storm has swept through the palace. The appearance of the princess, studying important documents, only increases his complete bewilderment. The emperor ironically teases his friend, who seems to have nightmares even when he is awake. An urgent night call and the mention of Marquis Dalton's name indicate that the game has moved to a new level. She easily explains her awareness, because now this matter concerns her directly. With royal dignity, the princess announces her kingdom's intervention in the Marquise's affairs. Her request for help with the scattered documents only emphasizes her new, active role. The question of evidence baffles the assistant, because so far they only have suspicions. With a heavy sigh, he admits that they still have to find concrete evidence to pin the traitor. The calm at the border is merely the calm before the storm, as the exact scale of the leak is unknown. A double threat looms as the descendants of Sayen prepare for action while the Marquise fuels war for profit. Her unexpected offer to be his partner at the banquet takes him by surprise, mixing up the cards. With a slight smile, she turns her request into a formal order, leaving him no choice. His too close presence confuses her, and she panics and demands that he keep his distance. The assistant watches in despair as his master once again destroys even the hint of romance. This awkward moment only confirms his reputation as a master of creating awkward situations. The maid decides to ask a bold question, trying to understand the true motives behind this strange invitation. She cunningly understands that there is another, more subtle way to be near him at the banquet. Her plan is brilliant: to appear not as a bride, but as a representative of a friendly state. Her plan for a one-person delegation only evokes polite bewilderment in her assistant. She proudly declares herself a daredevil, ready to represent the entire kingdom single-handedly. She gives clear instructions as she prepares for her new role and a meeting that could change everything. His sudden appearance and shining smile take her by surprise, ruining all her cunning plans. They are both in shock, because he should be at an important meeting and not here, interfering in her affairs. He stubbornly insists on his presence, despite all her attempts to dissuade him. Her arguments about safety and effectiveness are shattered by his irrational desire to be close. She bitterly reminds him of his duty, but in his eyes there is only one thing: stubborn determination. His unexpected question about love makes her freeze, because he has found her weakest spot. He reproachfully reminds her of her words from yesterday, questioning her sincerity and feelings. His clarification about true love and a curse takes her by surprise, because she was thinking about something completely different. With pain in his voice, he reproaches her for neglect, accusing her of putting work before their relationship. In the empty hall, his words about mutual efforts sound like a death sentence, highlighting the gulf between them. His unfair accusations explode her patience, because she thought she was doing everything possible. In a fit of rage, she lists all her humiliations, including attempts to improve relations with his intolerable father. Her cry of despair is met with his cold incomprehension, because he sees only what he wants to see. He jealously reminds her of her promise to her father, ignoring all her attempts to establish contact with him. His bitter reproach for her disappearance on the day of the proposal sounds like an accusation of betrayal. He lists her most shameful antics, turning her humiliation into his main weapon. With a devilish smile, he accepts her challenge, and their battle for attention turns into a dangerous game. Their spat of mutual insults becomes a comical reflection of their turbulent and confused feelings. The servants watch this childish fight with horror, sensing that their marriage will turn the palace into a battlefield. Count Frost's appearance interrupts the chaos, his confused expression suggesting complete ignorance. She desperately tries to convey her personality through clucking, putting the servant in an awkward position. Her genius plan of using a translator and threats seems flawless to her, but he only sighs. He questions her tactics with a touch of irony, because in his world, threats are empty words. With authority in his voice, the emperor orders the count to reveal all the information, leaving him no choice. The count, in shock, tries to comprehend that this wet chicken is the legendary princess. Rumors of her incredible beauty are shattered by the pitiful reality of a wet and miserable bird. His polite apology and complete lack of reaction to her appearance only increased her humiliation. The hero makes it clear with icy contempt that he is not going to listen to excuses. The absurdity of the situation takes the ruler by surprise, causing uncontrollable laughter. The guy falls into a real panic, while his boss enjoys the moment. The sarcastic applause only emphasizes the absurdity of what happened. An attempt to justify himself opens old wounds and reminds us of the young man's coldness. The tension mounts as another person's fate is now at stake. The terrible truth about the betrayal that cost the lives of many soldiers is revealed. His eyes burn with rage, leaving the culprit no chance of forgiveness. A harsh sentence has been passed, and now the powerful man will lose everything. The new news brings with it the threat of brutal reprisals against the innocent. His cold order to capture her people, rather than execute them, sounds like an icy promise of mercy. He drowns in regret, realizing that with his laughter he hurt her again, deepening an already deep wound. Around the fires beneath the walls of the capital, rumors are brewing, exaggerated and dramatized by proximity to power. The conversation by the fire returns to the mysterious nobleman who became the first link in this chain of intrigue. At night, a mysterious messenger in a cloak appeared to them, introducing himself as a servant of a powerful marquise. The young knight desperately makes excuses, because this contact was the only chance to find out the truth. The false rumors spread by the marquis paint the image of a manipulative emperor who distracts the people from the truth. Sweet lies about romantic healing of the curse become the main weapon in this dirty game. The absurdity of these rumors is obvious, but this is only the tip of the iceberg in a sea of disinformation. The final blow is the news of her service to a foreign country, intended to completely destroy her reputation. The Duke is suspicious of the news, as this empire has never been a true ally of theirs. Rumors of the princess's coercion provoke anger among her people, and suspicion falls on the emperor himself. The realization of their fatal mistake comes too late, and they realize that they trusted the wrong monarch. Meanwhile, the faithful Meghan resolutely heads towards her descendants, ready for a conversation without weapons. He bitterly recalls his shame, captured in a painting that the artist painted over several sleepless nights. She burns with shame at the sight of her ridiculous image, but deep down she is still not ready to forgive him. This picture becomes the last straw for her, because her lover looks simply stupid in it. He vividly describes his humiliation when he had to convince everyone that an ordinary chicken was a princess. His story makes her burst into laughter, and at that moment he understands for the first time what true joy is. With a tender smile, he asks if she has forgiven him, but her pouty expression suggests she is still enjoying the moment. Her innocent touch completely disarms him, depriving him of his will and making his heart melt. Having gathered his courage, he makes her an unexpected proposal, inviting her to dance at the upcoming banquet. She happily agrees, because her main wish, to give him her first dance, will finally come true. Her innocent question about popular dances takes him by surprise, because she knows nothing about modern mores. The realization that her knowledge of dance is a century and a half out of date plunges her into genuine horror. In a panic, she tries to refuse, but his determined grip leaves her no chance of escape. He declares with a devilish smile that she can start studying right now, without giving her time to come to her senses. The first clumsy steps in his arms make her doubt her abilities, and this crazy undertaking. Her embarrassment and awkwardness only increase his tenderness, and he finally drowns in her charm. She jokingly asks for protective magic for her legs, but he is ready to offer her something much more. His unexpected strength and confidence in the dance completely destroy her idea of him as a weak ruler. She is shocked by his statement, because even the strongest warriors cannot train the top of their feet. He proudly admits that he danced only with his mother, which completely disarms her. Her surprise at his ease in dancing only underlines how little she knew about his hidden talents. As a joke, she offers him a love potion to make him the most seductive emperor. He ironically rejects her offer, hinting that he would be more suited to a foot potion right now. Counting the number of times she misses, he realizes with horror that his legs have already been injured 14 times. With a last-ditch effort, she tries to continue, but her chicken form prevents her from moving forward. They decide to continue tomorrow, as disgrace at the banquet is the last thing either of them wants. His sudden question, full of curiosity, interrupts their rehearsal, promising a new, interesting conversation. His tactless question about eggs becomes the last straw, filling the cup of her chicken patience. Deeply offended, she flies away in a rage, leaving him completely bewildered. On the long-awaited morning of the banquet, the air is filled with anticipation and the sparkle of jewels. In a luxurious dress, she admires modern trends, finding them bold and beautiful. The maids watch her with excitement, because today is her official debut in high society. The thought of meeting the former empress makes her nervous, and she seeks support from her friend. The sudden appearance of the emperor interrupts their conversation, and the atmosphere instantly becomes tense. Her heart pounds wildly with doubt, because she doesn't understand whether she is adapting to his tastes. Her direct question about what she looks like takes him by surprise, and he is speechless at her beauty. His awkward compliment and subsequent rude denial leave the servants in complete shock. His hesitant compliment only leaves her slightly puzzled, as she was expecting a completely different reaction. She complains ironically about his charming face, which prevents her from taking his words seriously. The tender gesture and the reminder of the upcoming dance make her heart flutter in anticipation. The delicate boutonniere on her wrist becomes a symbol of their fragile intimacy and his silent admiration. A bloodbath is brewing in the night forest, but fate intervenes, sending them to the imperial palace. The offer to meet only the next morning sounds like a mockery to those who have been looking for it for so long. The young knight's anger and impatience collide with Megan's icy calm and inflexibility. The noise of the banquet outside the palace walls only increases their sense of injustice and powerlessness. They don't understand why they are denied a meeting while their princess is having fun at the ball. In their eyes, she is not a guest, but a captive, forced to participate in a humiliating performance. The thought of the emperor's baseness in making a laughingstock of their princess makes his blood boil. With cold determination, he knocks Megan out, because their mission is to save the princess, not wait for permission. The Duke gives clear orders, sending his best warriors on a daring rescue operation. As they make their way through enemy territory, they rely on a map given to them by a dubious ally. The appearance of the luxurious Palace of Roses confirms their fears. They are heading straight into the enemy's lair. Hotheads suggest an immediate attack, but the situation requires a cold and calculating strategy. Meanwhile, the Emperor reminds the princess of the main goal. Their safety comes first. With a slight smile, she cools the ardor of her defenders, reminding them that their task is to leave quietly. His sudden question about her readiness leaves her at a loss, because there is no turning back. With tenderness in his voice, he promises to never force her to do anything she doesn't want, reaffirming his love. His new name, Emperor Lanok, still sounds unfamiliar and strange to him. The ceremonial announcement of their arrival marks the beginning of her triumphant entrance into society. The sheer number of people and the flashes of attention take her by surprise, causing a slight panic. His caring whisper and gentle touch instantly calm her, restoring her confidence. She becomes completely immersed in the dance, but its sudden stop confuses her and throws her off the rhythm. The appearance of his father with a sly grin suggests that this meeting is not an accident, but a provocation. Her daring knockout of the former emperor becomes the main sensation of the evening, shocking everyone present. Word of her grace and dance prowess spread quickly throughout the hall, building her reputation. In the midst of the dance, he suddenly gives an order, and cries of intruders shake the palace. His commanding voice, usually inspiring fear, now sounds to her like the most seductive music. A loud accusation against the emperor shakes the hall, and the Duke challenges him, declaring him a criminal. He accuses the emperor of breaking the laws and publicly humiliating a member of the royal family. The emperor is perplexed because he does not understand how his actions could destroy the peace that he values so much. The guests whisper in shock, trying to understand who this daredevil is and what kind of insult he means. Even the princess doubts him, and the emperor is desperate to understand what he is accused of. The duke announces his true goal: to free Princess Soria, heir to the throne of Siam. This news shocks everyone, and the princess is horrified to realize that she has become the center of this scandal. The accusations of persecution and shame seem like nonsense to her, but she doesn't understand what's happening. The faithful knight finds no evidence of humiliation, for there is not a single chicken among the guests. The emperor realizes with horror that before him is a descendant of the kingdom of Siam, and his heart sinks with a bad feeling. Her peace plan fell apart because she only wanted to come to an agreement, but everything got out of control. The sudden appearance of the duke and his men turns the failure into a real disaster. She realizes with horror that everything is going according to the Marquis of Dalton's diabolical plan. Her people fell into a trap, deceived by the false speeches of a treacherous schemer. Realizing his defeat, the duke gives the order to retreat, saving his men from the slaughter. Her royal duty burns in her heart, and she vows to protect her deceived subjects. The emperor invites her to play a dangerous game, asking only for complete and unconditional trust. His commanding stance cuts off all objections because he is ready to risk everything for her. He sees her not as a weak woman, but as a royal person equal to himself, worthy of respect. With renewed confidence, she steps out into the crowd, ready to stand before them as his equal queen. With icy calm, she demands the leader's name, taking control of the chaos of the invasion. His shock at being recognized turns to horror when she announces that she had been waiting for him. Dropping to her knees, she immediately takes the initiative, asking a question about ancient magic. He proudly confirms his belonging to her people, proving his knowledge of their heritage. She asks him for help, and he, without a second's hesitation, swears his unconditional loyalty. His vow is enough for her, and she rises from her knees, ready to accept her role as queen. With just one word, she turns the invasion into a misunderstanding, protecting her people from the empire's wrath. With royal dignity, the princess asks the emperor for leniency towards her erring subjects. She mentally begs the confused emperor to play along with her, because everything depends on it. Barely concealing his embarrassment, the young man tries to follow her plan, acknowledging the damage done to the palace. The caustic question of compensation hangs in the air, and all eyes are on her, waiting for an answer. She proudly proclaims her magical abilities, which only her people and she possess. With sadness in her voice, she speaks of the empire's main problem, the drought that has plagued the land for many years. Her bold offer to give away an entire river leaves the emperor in complete and utter shock. With a slight smile, she repeats her gift, offering him a solution he can't refuse. She is ready to prove her strength right now, and a flash of magic envelops the entire hall, stunning the imagination. To the sounds of magical rain, she announces a new, strong alliance between their two peoples. His unexpected and powerful gesture makes her heart skip a beat as he picks her up in his arms. This simple act of caring becomes a much greater shock to her than all her magical feats. She realizes with relief that he sensed her weakness, and in his arms, she can finally relax. His question about her promise sounds like a challenge, because he is offering her something that cannot be refused. He reminds her of her generous gift, the river, which now connects their destinies with an invisible thread. Her frivolous attitude towards the situation frightens him, because she does not realize the full seriousness of her promise. He imagines with horror how the hungry jackal nobles will pounce on her if she fails. His panic seems exaggerated to her, because she can't imagine what people are capable of in despair. His touching concern for her, and not for the banquet, makes her heart melt with tenderness. She dismisses his genius, but that's not the point. It's something much more important. She finally reveals her plan, a magic spell that can restore the river to its former power. She only needs one magician for the ritual, since 3 of the 4 are already on her side. She offers a daring solution, not to look for a 4th, but to simply dry up the magic of those who interfere with them. Her determination to help her people becomes her top priority, pushing everything else into the background. With pain in his voice, he reproaches her for having changed her priorities again, leaving him behind. She recalls her timid request for love, but her official status at the banquet ruined everything. With a heavy heart, she admits that she cannot become his empress, dashing his hopes. He tenderly reproaches her for her haste, but offers her freedom if he no longer needs her. His softness and vulnerability weaken her will, and she cannot find the strength to push him away. His command to close her eyes makes her heart beat faster in anticipation of the inevitable. At the last moment, she turns into a chicken, and his long-awaited kiss turns into a comical failure. He is shocked that this was not their first kiss, and his jealousy flares up with renewed vigor. His latest revelation about her age comes as a real blow to her, sending her into a deep sleep. His words about her age sound like an insult to her, and she proudly walks away, not wanting to listen to the child. In a rage, she flies away, leaving him completely bewildered and in a whirlwind of feathers. He regretfully realizes that everything went wrong because he only wanted to say that they were both already adults. The next morning, a tense atmosphere, full of omissions and suspicions, reigns in Georgina's house. Despite the outward calm, hidden anxiety and anticipation of a storm can be seen in the guests' eyes. The hostess of the house can hardly contain her anger because her uninvited guests have violated all the rules of decency. The Duke politely offers compensation, but his true goal is to find out why the Emperor kidnapped the princess. He is not aware of all the events, but his suspicions about the forced abduction of the princess only grow stronger. A loyal friend tries to protect their fragile relationship by warning them of the consequences of distorting the truth. His words of affection only add fuel to the fire, as rumors of the princess's humiliation have already spread throughout the area. She mentally begs herself to pull herself together for the sake of a good relationship with the princess, but her heart trembles. He tries to focus on the main thing, but rumors of her humiliation continue to torment his soul. The old duke confidently declares that she has no reason to stay here, and they will take her with them. The hostess of the house notes with slight irony that the duke is a guest from a hostile kingdom. She is surprised by how little the princess's vassals care about her true feelings and desires. She confidently states that her relationship with the emperor is developing, and the weakening of the curse is proof of this. With a slight smile, she calls them the perfect couple, questioning the duke's decision to take her away. His question about who she is making this decision for makes her think about her true motives. The Duchess stops him, sensing a hidden threat and unwillingness to retreat in his words. The young knight explodes in rage, shouting that their princess is too good for this unworthy emperor. The Duchess proudly reminds everyone of the great magic that their princess possesses even under the curse. With a challenge in his voice, the young knight asks, what is the superiority of their emperor? His ridiculous assertion that the princess's magic is her only virtue is met with nothing but contempt. The argument flares up again, and the Duke makes a bold proposal: arrange a meeting for them to prove his case. In a rage, he demands complete frankness, and his determination forces the assistant to retreat. With a heavy heart, the servant agrees to this adventure, because until this moment he had never doubted himself. The emperor's sudden sigh and his tired appearance indicate that he has encountered something out of the ordinary. His naive question about the kiss leaves everyone baffled, because no one expected such a turn of events. The feeling that there is someone extra in the room becomes almost tangible, and everyone feels awkward. The news that a certain count from Cayenne is requesting an audience becomes the last straw in this crazy day. The thought of meeting a descendant of his people terrifies him, because this is the last person he would like to see. With icy calm, he gives the order to silence the guest, not shying away from any methods. His cruel order shocks everyone, but he only sees the guest as a naive child, not worthy of his attention. Desperation and anger drive the young knight to recklessness, and he tries to break down the locked doors. The assistant teases him ironically, hinting at his useless title of great magician. The emperor easily parries his words, reminding him of his unlimited power and right to any whims. He throws him a new challenge, warning that if the knight breaks down the door, the duke will be forced to risk his life. The icy threat of a dungeon excursion leaves the young warrior frozen in fear and powerlessness. In his eyes, the emperor is a dangerous tyrant who treats his guests so cruelly. He scornfully advises the inexperienced Highlander to learn to keep his mouth shut before meddling in other people's affairs. He bitterly warns the knight that thoughtless words will only harm the princess. For the sake of her feelings, he is ready to let the guest go, but asks him to share his opinion in the future. His desperate question about how to determine the moment for a deep kiss leaves his friend stumped. Confused, the knight does not understand why the emperor needs such strange details. In his eyes, this man is not the one he knew before, but a completely different one, an obsessed emperor. The servant anxiously asks if she really doubts the emperor's feelings for her. His question takes her by surprise, because she doesn't understand how he knows about her secret fears. A sleepless night spent in thought and gnawing guilt left a heavy mark on her soul. She starts the day as a chicken, because she is afraid of finding out the truth that could ruin everything. Her greatest fear is to admit to him that she is afraid of the power of their sensual kiss. She hopefully asks her young friend to grow up wise and not make the mistakes of the emperor. With determination in her heart, she goes towards her goal, because her beloved is the most outstanding person. She is surprised to note the changes in his behavior, because he has become more gentle and no longer showers her with reproaches. The thought that his actions could be part of a cunning plan makes her heart pound wildly. She pushes away disturbing thoughts, focusing on the main task, weakening the influence of the insidious marquise. Lost in her thoughts, she does not notice the bewilderment of the servants, who do not understand why she does not enter. Important questions about money and population are on her mind as she prepares to rebuild her kingdom. The sudden appearance of a stranger blocks her path, and his determined appearance frightens her to the depths of her soul. She has never seen this young man in the palace before, and his presence raises a lot of questions in her mind. His strange look and sudden kneeling plunge her into complete and utter bewilderment. His tears of happiness from the realization of his role in fulfilling the dream of his ancestors touch her to the depths of her soul. The knowledge that before her stands a descendant of the faithful house of Shalid fills her heart with joy and hope. He swears his allegiance, promising to save her and restore her kingdom to its former glory. The emperor interrupts their touching scene with a touch of irony, reminding them of his plans for the princess. His commanding gesture and patronizing tone make her burn with anger and humiliation. The tempting reminder of last night and their plans makes her heart pound. He brazenly blackmails her, offering to stay and listen to his story about her, playing on her curiosity. Confused and at a loss, she is forced to remember her plans to avoid his trap. The young knight's anger flares up with renewed vigor, because he cannot tolerate such disregard for her highness. The emperor's loyal friend watches this scene with irony, realizing that the line between closeness and disrespect is very thin. His words about the depth of their relationship make the assistant think, because he longs to know their secret. The tension between them becomes almost palpable, and everyone feels that something important has happened. The emperor tries to justify himself, but his words only increase the young knight's anger. The false accusation of harassment leaves the emperor in shock, and he desperately tries to justify himself. The assistant, blushing and stuttering, tries to explain the essence of their deep conversation. She asks ironically what kind of inexperienced advice he was trying to get from the same amateurs. He is burning with shame, unable to admit his ridiculous question about the stages of a kiss. Meanwhile, the maids watch this scene in bewilderment, not understanding how a chicken can be so beautiful. Her anger flares up again, because she is sure that he has confused her with another chicken. With royal generosity, she promises to forgive him, but only after he becomes one of her subjects. She looks at him suspiciously, not believing that he will get away with the harassment accusations so easily. Burning with shame, he is forced to admit that their deep conversation was just about kissing. His confession becomes the last straw for her, and she flies away in a rage, calling him a disgrace. This comical scene leaves the guests completely bewildered, because such drama is commonplace here. He rushes after her in desperation, begging her to stop and talk, but she is already beside herself with embarrassment. Burning with shame, she is not ready to discuss kissing, and she needs time to come to her senses. Her panicked escape leaves him alone with a broken heart and a cry of despair. Just half an hour after this chaos, the palace is once again plunged into a deceptive silence. Hiding in the bushes, she breathes a sigh of relief, but immediately realizes that she has no idea where she is. Her solitude is interrupted, and she realizes that her nocturnal antics and daytime escapes have not gone unnoticed. Fate ironically brings her together with Lord Theos, the last person she would like to see at this moment. He recalls her magical reign, making it clear that her power has not gone unnoticed. Her fall from the sky in the form of a chicken only confirms his guess. He knew about her curse from the very beginning. Desperately seeking refuge, she asks him for help. Not knowing whether he is a friend or an enemy, she decides to stay to collect her thoughts, as she needs to prepare for the upcoming meeting. Plucking up her courage, she decides to ask him a personal question. Hoping to get advice, she asks him point blank how he became convinced of love before marriage, looking for the key to his tangled story. Reflecting on the high demands placed on the Empress, she begins to understand the reason for his 3 years of loneliness. A new insight dawns on her. His unpopularity is merely a consequence of his search for an ideal, and not his personal shortcoming. His sudden and tactless question about her personal life takes her by surprise, causing a storm of comical indignation. His insightful words wound her to the very heart, because he guessed her main weakness: complete ignorance of love. With a heavy sigh, he doubts his son will ever marry, casting a shadow over their future. His vague advice that love is an instinct only confuses her further. In the midst of her thoughts, his desperate cry is heard, and she realizes that she can no longer run. Out of breath from the chase, he finally catches her, begging her to listen to him in a voice breaking with emotion. With unexpected calm, she agrees, and her innocent gaze gives him a moment of fragile peace. With a gentle touch, he tries to calm her fears about the kingdom, promising that nothing will change. With firm determination, the emperor vows to take on all her concerns, offering her his unconditional protection. But her calm and curious face in response makes him realize the huge gap between their feelings. This abyss gives birth to an icy horror in his soul, and he painfully realizes that she does not need him at all. He reflects bitterly on how things would have been simpler if she had been hungry for power rather than his heart. With generosity bordering on indifference, he offers her both the throne and help in reviving the kingdom. Meanwhile, his father, full of health and strength, is ready to intervene in the affairs of the empire again. He easily agrees to help her, because solving the drought problem and reviving her people is in his interests. She considers that lifting the curse now is a better option than wasting magic on the thorns. Her flippant offer of a love potion only highlights her complete lack of understanding of the situation. In the guest palace, the young knight is surprised to realize that the emperor did not oppress their princess at all. The experienced duke confidently declares that, apparently, the curse is almost lifted. This news takes him by surprise, and he anxiously puts on his glove, preparing for the unknown. He realizes that their mission here is over, and it is time for them to return home, sooner than they expected. The Duke announces his agreement with the Emperor, and his generosity seems almost unreal. The young knight demands clarity, because he senses a hidden catch behind the Duke's vague speeches. He reminds the young man of his high status, for he is the last of the nobles, besides the Duke himself. He speaks with slight disdain of the knight's inexperience, considering him unprepared for real trials. The Duke reveals his plan. He will go after the people, leaving the knight with the most important mission: protecting the princess. In a panic, the young man realizes that he is being left alone in this hostile place, and he is overcome with horror. The thought of having to deal with the unpredictable princess alone drives him to despair. Burning with shame for his disrespectful thoughts, he asks for forgiveness with tears in his eyes. His question about whether the Duke will leave without saying goodbye to the princess sounds like a last desperate plea. With a heavy heart, the Duke leaves, knowing that all he can say is that he will return as soon as possible. Her main goal is to destroy the cause of the curse, and for this she is ready to do anything. Her friend listens to her with concern, realizing that the Emperor's anger is only the tip of the iceberg. She sighs bitterly, because workaholism is the healthiest, but also the loneliest way to deal with anger. Her philosophical question about the visibility of feelings makes her friend think about the depth of her experiences. Previously, she considered the invisibility of feelings an inconvenience, but now she sees it as a salvation. She painfully admits that the curse has not been lifted, despite the fact that her feelings seem quite strong to her. A terrible guess pierces her. Either their love is not real, or only one of them loves here. The friend realizes with horror the tragic nature of the situation, because the lack of love is the only thing that prevents her from healing. The sudden appearance of a young knight interrupts her sad thoughts, and she realizes with horror that she has completely forgotten about him. He waits for her attention with puppy-like devotion, and she can hardly contain her laughter. returning to the role of queen. He humbly offers to express his opinion about what is tormenting her soul so much. Gathering his courage, he is ready to share his humble thoughts to console his queen. His words about the curse not being a reason for despondency sound like encouragement and support. With delight in his voice, he reminds her that she is his mistress and his only queen, no matter what. His loyalty makes her smile, and she realizes that her appearance does not change her essence. With renewed determination, she casts aside empty worries about true love, because that is not the main thing. She will no longer allow such trifles to control her life and destiny. Self-digging is not for her, because it does not offer any solutions, but only leads to a dead end. With a firm resolve, she decides to return to the palace, ready for a frank conversation. Her crazy idea about a love potion as a solution to all problems leaves her friend in complete shock. Her friend desperately tries to bring her back to reality, but the princess is obsessed with the idea of a love potion. With wisdom in her voice, she reminds us that there are many paths in life, and we shouldn't get stuck on just one. She opens the doors with delight, ready to explore all the paths this world offers her. With cold determination, she declares that if the curse wants true love, it will get it. She boldly asserts that false love is no different from real love, and the curse will not notice the difference. Her friend tries to stop her, reminding her of the danger of drastic measures, because the curse is already weakening. She faces a cruel choice: her personal feelings or the fate of an entire nation suffering from drought. With a heavy heart, she decides that the problems of her people are more important than a deep conversation about love. She is willing to sacrifice herself for her people, and her determination leaves no room for doubt. Her insidious idea of mixing the potion into the tea leaves her friend in complete shock. Her friend, in desperation, begs her to give up her crazy idea with the love potion. The memory of the attempt to poison the emperor makes her realize the full danger of her plan. The thought that even the slightest mistake could lead to chaos chills her blood. The fear of being accused of attempted murder and executed forces her to abandon her crazy plan. With a heavy heart, she goes to the palace, hoping that he will understand and appreciate her efforts. Despite her outward confidence, she understands that convincing him will not be easy at all. Her first step is to secretly enter the palace, to first explain to him what a love potion is. But her plan is immediately ruined when she encounters those she least expected to see. In a panic, she tries to slip away unnoticed, but her clumsy attempts only attract more attention. His powerful touch and the princess's quiet voice indicate that her night's adventure is over. His sudden question about responsibility catches her off guard, forcing her to consider her role. He gently presses on her sense of duty, reminding her that she is as much an heir as he is. With irony, he teaches the faithful knight that duty is not blind obedience, but the correction of mistakes. He announces his departure with a heavy heart, claiming that this is the only way to save his son. Her thoughts are confused. Her father is running away from work, and Megan is going against orders to protect him. His marching manner speaks of the seriousness of his intentions, and she understands that he is not joking. Her question about the wife he had bragged about so much takes him by surprise, causing a storm of indignation. He assures that he explained everything to his wife, because his mission is to get to the bottom of an important matter. Megan blocks her path, reminding her of the emperor's orders and her own safety. He wearily reminds her of his help, but she is completely bewildered, not understanding what he means. He ironically reminds her of his help, since it was his chicken show that brought them closer together. She recalls how he revealed the Marquise's secret to her, which played a key role in preventing the conspiracy. His imperious order not to run away this time sounds like a desperate plea not to leave him again. The son brazenly demands his father's help with work, turning their usual roles upside down. He pulls her close, declaring that he needs time to finally commit to their relationship. His question about whether it's time for him to get married sounds like the most unexpected and public proposal. Her heart is pounding wildly because she can't believe this is actually happening. With a slight smile, he shifts his responsibilities to his father, because the one who fell in love first should try harder. The father is shocked that his son is ready to give him the throne for love, and grumblingly agrees to help. His cheeky question about whether she wants to seduce him becomes the last straw in this crazy scene. Her cheeky advice to just smile makes him realize how easily she manipulates him. The father shakes his head in bewilderment, not understanding where his son got such sudden courage from. She walks out into the night, frustrated and confused, not understanding what she did wrong this time. His early visit surprises her, and she thinks with irony that he has finally learned his lesson. A loud knock on the door interrupts her thoughts, and she eagerly rushes to open it. She easily parries his impatient question, hinting at his complete inexperience in matters of the heart. With a wise smile, she explains to him that the desire to look good for the one she loves is natural. His naive assumption that she made him wait as punishment only highlights his ignorance. She realizes with surprise that he really has no idea about his mistake. His sudden and powerful touch makes her heart skip a beat, and tension hangs in the air. My heart pounds wildly as she begins to list his mistakes one by one. She reproachfully reminds him that he shouldn't have called her by her chicken name in front of strangers. His excuse that Megan saw everything anyway only makes him feel more guilty, as he has destroyed her reputation. Her second question about seduction baffles him, as he is completely inexperienced in matters of the heart. With a slight mockery, she puts him in his place, reminding him that a child should listen to his elders. She proudly declares her age-old superiority, thereby completely disarming him. His childish resentment at being called a child only emphasizes her rightness. He bitterly asks how he could have fallen in love with such an impudent and unbearable woman. With a dazzling smile, she reminds him of her incredible charm, which is impossible to resist. She easily states that she could learn magic anytime she wanted to. She mercilessly cuts into his self-esteem, declaring his complete lack of talent in magic. With unexpected self-confidence, he parries her attack, considering his sexuality a sufficient talent. His bold answer infuriates her, and she sternly scolds him for being overly self-confident. Gathering his courage, he decides to ask her a question that could destroy her image of an experienced seductress. A direct question about her actual relationship experience catches her off guard, hitting her where it hurts most.